and welcome everyone to the Champions Chess Tour. This is the second event. Hikaru will be playing today against Vladimir Fedoseev. I'm Grandmaster Benjamin, and I'm delighted to be joined here by International Master Alex Ostrovsky. Alex, I know that Fedoseev is one of the players on your roster, so can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect from him in Rapid Chess?
Hey Benjamin, thanks so much, and I'm really happy to be joining you today. And indeed, as you realize, both Vladimir Fedoseev and Hikaru are teammates actually in the Pro Chess League team on the Gotham Knights, where I'm the manager. Spoilers, you might be playing these guys in the playoffs, of course, but yeah, I think Vladimir, the big fish, he is not an unfamiliar face to Hikaru or to the fans. I know these guys have played hundreds and hundreds of games online. And Vladimir is definitely one of the premier rapid players in the world. Obviously, it's one of the reasons he made it this far in this the Champions Tour, and that he's on our team. His rating in Classical UWC is something like 2674, but I think that's very misleading for his strength. He's something like 2760 FIDE in Rapid and in Blitz, over 3000 in chess.com. So I think this guy, without any bias, is definitely one of the premier speed players in the world.
Yeah, and he's definitely, like you said, a big fish. That's also his online username. And yeah, as you said, in classical chess, he's of course a beast. 2670 is nothing to snip at. But in Rapid and Blitz, he is very much, I feel like he's just a little bit below Hikaru and Magnus and all of those guys, but not too much. And he can fight with these guys. He did exceptionally well in the play-in portion. That's how he punched his ticket here. That being said, I feel like Hikaru should definitely be the favorite. Hikaru also smoked him a couple of years back in the Speed Chess Championship. He almost adopted him. He started with 9-0, but the 10th game ended in a draw. So maybe that left a bit of a scar on Fedoseev. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, being down 9-0, I'm sure is almost an unfathomable experience for someone of that caliber. Only, someone like Hikaru or Magnus, I think those guys, and they're, like you said, Fedoseev is not on their level. I don't think anyone in the world is on the level of those two guys. So yeah, perhaps that still has left a scar, but maybe it also left Vladimir with something to prove. Maybe he wants to come in here today remembering those painful losses, and he wants to show everyone that no, this is not who he is. He's actually going to be putting up a huge fight. And I was also going to say, I feel like when you mentioned that he's obviously a beast in all these formats, he is up there like in everything. Like I remember even in the Chess 960 portion when Hikaru became a world champion, Vladimir was also there in the finals, not in the final 8, or I think it was. So he's every time I think, Rapid, Blitz, Chess 960, obviously he's a beast in Classical. He's always right up there with the top guys, maybe not necessarily first place, but he's always there competing with them. And this reminds me of a really quick anecdote that I'm just thinking about. I remember during the pandemic, in 2020, when Magnus suddenly played on chess.com wanting to farm his rating, he started playing Fedoseev. And, I think he was trying to get to like 3,300 or something. And all of a sudden, Fedoseev started beating him. I don't think that Magnus even won the match. They played like 10 games. It was 5-5. So that just really shows you how strong he can be at his best.
Exactly, yeah, he can definitely hang with the top guys. And like I said, when he played in the Fischer Random World Championship, I think he came third in the group right behind Magnus and Hikaru, but he also, I think against Hikaru, maybe he even scored like 50% or something. Against Magnus, he also made some draws. So I'm very curious to see what kind of games we will see. I'm sure they're going to be very combative. Hikaru with white pieces, I'm sure he's going to try to go for the win. But when Fedoseev has white, he will definitely also go for his chances. And I believe there is a bit of a delay, right?
Yeah, I think they should be starting soon, but from what I understand, there's a slight delay for broadcasting purposes. We do have multiple matches here. Obviously, we're focusing on Hikaru against Fedoseev, but we have some other matchups as well, including Magnus Carlsen against Vladislav Artemiev. So I believe it's should be starting soon, but slight delay in order to sync up with some of this broadcasting. And speaking of, this event has some of the biggest names I can think of when it comes to chess, and obviously rapid chess as well. So very exciting day for us, I think, ahead for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And some of you might be new here on Kick. This is Hikaru's new streaming platform, so make sure to follow him. And yeah, there we see him getting ready for the match. He's taking a sip of his jug. He's looking pretty relaxed. He, of course, is of course super experienced. So he is just gearing in, and yeah, we're just getting ready. We're just waiting for the games to start at this point.
Yeah, and I was also going to add that Hikaru is fresh off a massive tournament, just winning the American Cup. That was a mix of classical and of rapid, and I think even some blitz there with Wesley So. So I was wondering how he would be feeling, you know, after such a long, grueling event. But as you said, he looks relaxed. He looks ready to go. Obviously, that was a long event, but he also must have a lot of positive emotions and you know, the hot hand. I mean, I feel like he always has the hot hand. He's winning everything in sight. So I think, yeah, I don't think it's going to affect him adversely today at all, or at least it doesn't look like it from his demeanor.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was especially impressed that he won 2 games in Classical. He won very convincingly against Sam Sevian and also against Lenier Dominguez. He beat him with the black pieces. And generally, I feel like knockout formats really favor Hikaru, because if the games end in a draw, then the time control gets faster and faster, and that's where he gets stronger and stronger. And that's what happened in American Cup. He drew the matches against Wesley So in Classical Chess, and he beat him in the Rapid and Blitz portion. So I think we have a similar format here in the Champions Chess Tour. They will play 4 games of Rapid Chess. If I'm not mistaken, the time control is 15 plus 3, right? And if the games end in a draw, I think they'll move on to an Armageddon game, correct?
I believe so, yes. And it's also, I was going to add a double knockout, right? I mean, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So it does favor him in knockout. Double knockout, I think even more of a favorite, having to defeat him, you know, this giant twice. And yeah, they do have the Rapid, the Blitz, and then an Armageddon at the end of that. And do we have games? I'm looking real quick. Looks like,
I think not.
I think we do. I see a Karakhan, I think, for Hikaru. So I think we have a couple moves in.
Let me refresh real quick. I don't see them. Well, let me go back. I see some moves in the other games. Here we go. Also,
yes.
There we saw the bracket real quick. So Hikaru, he is playing against Fedoseev, and he will play the winner of the matchup between Wesley So and Levon Aronian, correct? I just had a glance real quick. And also Magnus is on the other side of the bracket, so they will only meet in the grand finals. But here, as you said, we had a Karak on defense, and Hikaru went for this variation with knight f3 and d3. This might look somewhat innocuous, because black has the opportunity to trade the queens here right away, but white is arguing that the endgame is slightly better. So Fedoseev goes for the move e6, now Hikaru goes queen e2, intending to play a bit of a King's Indian setup. b7, g3, you see a trade on e5, you cannot take this pawn, do the queen a5 check, and you lose the knight. So Hikaru just keeps developing with bishop g2, knight f6, cancels queen c7, and the move b3. And Alex, what do you make of this opening?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see this because I am a lifelong Karakhan player. I have faced this variation with knight f3, g3. Like you said, it looks like, what is he doing? You know, he's offering this queen trade. Does he just want to draw the game? But that's not true at all. I think especially at faster time controls, this line has scored tremendously well for white. You get this endgame, it's slightly better. White has these relatively simple plans. The Karakhan pawn on c6, this was very subtle, but it creates a small weakness on d6, which could be an issue. So I was really interested to see Fedoseev avoid that endgame and play this move e6. Obviously, he blocked in his light square bishop, but then he proceeded to use that small tactical trick with the queen check, as you pointed out, to play e5. So now we have like King's Indian type formation, and Hikaru, I think, is going to feel right at home in this. He's played King's Indian attacks through knight f3 and move 1, so I think this is the type of position he has reached through many different move orders. Fedoseev, I think, also happy to be able to, I guess, keep queens on the board. He strikes me as certainly a dynamic player, and here we see him play this move b6, so he's finding this bishop a6 avenue for his light square bishop. And yeah, I'm taking notes on his handling of the opening. I think both sides are relatively getting what they may want here, and we're gonna have like a slow maneuvering game for the foreseeable, I think, 10 moves or something like that.
Right, and we started with knight b2 by Hikaru, and yeah, the idea was so that now he can meet bishop a6 with knight c4, and perhaps in case Fedoseev plays the move knight bd7 here, you could consider the move knight to d6 check, giving a check, and you will get the bishop pair. However, your queen actually could get trapped here with move b5 by knight c5. So Fedoseev just decides to castle here. We go bishop to b2, And we have the move knight bd7 defending the pawn on e5. But I like the idea of knight bd2 followed by knight c4, because let's say Hikaru had just continued here normally with bishop b2. Now after bishop a6, you have to meet that with the move c4. But now he has a bit more pressure on the e5 pawn, and you don't really ever want to go b5 because then you block in your light squared bishop on a6. So I think the opening is definitely for Hikaru here.
Yeah, and how do you think he's going to continue? I'm looking at moves. I know b5 might not necessarily be something black wants to play, as you mentioned, but still, I feel like maybe a4 for white at some moment could be a possibility to expand on the queen side. Something like rook d1, knight h4, knight f5 looks very tempting. So it looks like white's play is relatively straightforward. I guess for Fedoseev, also he could centralize rook d8, rook e8, drop a piece back to f8. Maybe the bishop or the knight can reroute. Although not so simple, right, with the pawn and e5 under pressure. So I think, yeah, both these guys are going to have to kind of play a little cat and mouse, like reacting to each other's plans. But it does feel like Hikaru has a little bit maybe more of an active idea, especially like this knight h4 idea that I was thinking about. So curious to see which way he'll go for.
Yeah, knight h4 definitely very interesting. Fedoseev will have to decide whether he does play g6 or not. He could also play something like, let's say, rook f8 and just meet knight f5 with the move bishop f8. This also looks pretty solid. And I was thinking maybe Hikaru can go here for the move rook fe1, defending the queen on e2, and now he's threatening the move knight takes e5. But perhaps here the move bishop to b4 would be annoying, because you don't really want to go c3, blocking in your dark squared bishop. So it's an interesting position, because Hikaru has a lot of pressure on the e5 pawn, but he can't take because Fedoseev can always take, and he has this pin on the queen. And you can't quite unpin yourself, because the moment you play queen e3, black's going to take here and ruin your pawn structure. And as we speak, we have the move rook fe1 on the board, and Fedoseev goes knight e5. Aha, so in case Hikaru takes, I guess he wants to take everything and go bishop f6 at the end. But there is still the... Oh, wait, there's knight takes c6. Wait, did he... Wait.
Is there some bishop c4 or something in the middle there? Why did he go knight e8? To defend, or did he miscalculate?
To defend the queen on c7. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. You're right.
So something like this, now the bishop will be hanging, and we see Hikaru quickly, I think, went bishop f1. Yeah, knight e8 is kind of a weird move, very subtle, right? This kind of pressure at e5 and this indirect way of defending it. I wonder if Fedoseev might be hoping to maybe play knight d6 in the near future, take advantage of that pinned knight on c4. It looks a little clumsy for now, but perhaps if he's... This looks a little ugly to me, but perhaps in the future he can play f6. He does it right away, actually. Now he completely doesn't have to worry about that pawn on e5. Maybe has to worry a little bit about some of these light squares. I don't know, like a move like bishop h3, knight h4. I'm not sure how effective that bishop is, but at least optically speaking, I'm thinking bishop h3, rook d1, bishop e6. But I think if Fedoseev's able to get that knight, from the passive e8 square to d6, maybe he can pose some questions to Hikaru utilizing that pin on the c4 knight.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think Hikaru would love to get knight h4 followed by queen g4 in, but Fedoseev is just in time to go knight d6, covering the f5 square and putting pressure on this knight on c4. So we'll see what Hikaru is going to do. However, to me, it looks a little bit passive to go knight e8 and f6. Hikaru also, I like the last move that he played, bishop f1, to make sure that he can always recapture with the bishop here. So let's see what he's going to do here. He's down almost a minute on the clock. But yeah, the position is still very rich, and both sides have a lot of plans and ideas.
I was going to point that out as well. I know it's still early, we started with 15 minutes, so plenty of time and chess left ahead, but Fedoseev is keeping up on the clock, and obviously Hikaru is extremely experienced, extremely quick, extremely strong blitz player, so getting into a time disadvantage, like one of the things I think we've all seen him do thousands of times is utilize not only his powerful play, but combine that with his handling of the clock, putting the opponent under pressure. So I think for Fedoseev, being able to, even early on, just avoid that deficit is going to be improve his chances later on. Saying that, of course, we're only on move 15, so both sides have plenty of time. We do have a 3-second increment, I believe. So even if you do get down on the clock, it's still, you still do have that slight cushion. And looks like Hikaru just went for a very logical looking centralization, rook d1. And I'm wondering what's his plan. Fedoseev goes rook to d8, but I was wondering what his plan was against something like knight d6, right? Which is his principal idea, it feels like.
Yeah, knight d6 makes a lot of sense. I was considering the move queen takes d2 because now knight takes c4 loses because we can take here and take on d7. And at the end of the variation, both bishops are hanging. But after the move queen d2, black would have the move bishop takes c4. Now, you can recapture with the pawn, but black should be doing pretty fine here after knight to c5. We can also take with the bishop, but then black will take again, I guess. Or maybe there's still this. I don't know. But yeah, rook d8 is on the board, defending the knight on d7 once more. And I'm sure that Hikaru, again, is looking at ideas of knight h4, but I don't quite see how to make it work after the move knight to d6.
Yeah, and I think as I was talking about the clock usage earlier, Fedoseev very quickly went for rook d8. So he could have calculated knight d6 if you mentioned there was this bishop c4, but I'm sure he thought, you know what, that move is not going anywhere. Let me just play rook d8, defending the knight, and kind of pass that decision for the future. We see Hikaru deciding to remove his queen from that pin square. Queen c3 has been played, but still, let's see if knight d6, bishop f1. I'm wondering if Fedoseev can still go for the same exchanging operation just to take some of the pressure off, remove some of these passive pieces. I also, if I'm playing black here, at least optically speaking, I'm a little concerned about my bishop at a6. I don't want there to be some kind of knight takes e5 tactic, and all of a sudden the bishop is loose, and there could be like a in-between move with knight d7. So I'm wondering if there is a current threat as well of something like that. If it's, let's say, Hikaru to play here.
Like, let's say you go h6, I think we can take here, right? Because if you take f1, we take on d7, and I believe this works out. I mean, the bishop is hanging, the rook is hanging, so this is winning. However, I'm really curious what Hikaru is planning to do in the event of bishop to c5. Is he just going to move his queen over to c3? Very much possible, but it looks a little bit clumsy. So let's see what Fedoseev is going to come up with. He played the move b5. And where do you actually go with the knight? I guess you have to go back to d2, but that's a little bit passive.
Right. So he does block in his bishop, as you mentioned earlier. This b5 move might not be something black wants to do, but nevertheless, you have forced Hikaru's knight back to d2. Maybe still you can consider like bishop c5 here, as you mentioned. So now the queen might have to go to a less than favorable position. But I think, at least now, if Hikaru is able to consolidate and somehow play like a4 and Fedoseev quickly goes knight b8, I was going to say some move like a4 could put pressure on b5. His dream is, of course, to get that pawn to go to b4. Then he could regain that c4 square. But this is looking like a micro battle, right? They keep like battling for these small things on the queen side. Hikaru puts a knight there, Fedoseev kicks it out. Now his bishop is a little bit passive. It's weird because he's played like knight b8, knight e8. All these pieces are going back. And yet, because of his pawn structure, it feels like Hikaru's pieces can't really take advantage of this passive play.
Exactly, yeah. These pawns on e5 and f6 are super solid. They're very effectively neutralizing the bishop from b2. The bishop on f1 is also not doing much. And the knight on d2 is also completely restricted by the pawn on c4. So Hikaru goes for the move bishop to h3. And perhaps with Fedoseev's last move, knight to b8, he's preparing the move b4, although I'm not quite sure if you actually want to do that because it severely weakens the c4 square. And perhaps here, Hikaru can play something like bishop b8 and bishop to c4. So let's see what is going to happen. Fedoseev could also prepare it with, let's say, knight d6 first to go b4, and now knight c4 will weaken white's pawn structure. And again, like, oh, shit, what is this? Fedoseev's pieces seem slightly more flexible. They have slightly better squares.
Yeah, I'm looking at this knight on d2 specifically, and it's going to take a long time to around the square. And we were mentioning this knight f5 idea on knight h4, knight f5 idea, that is, which is one of Hikaru's possible active plans. I wonder if he'll consider going for something like that. But even if he gets that knight to f5 right now, it looks like the rest of his pieces are very far behind from delivering some major threats. So the save's thinking, I wonder if it makes any sense for him to go bishop to c8. That would be something I would think about here with my bishop kind of looking. I mean, I guess it does x-ray the queen on e2, but I would think that potentially trading the light square bishops here would be reasonable. He goes g6. Is he covering the f5 square, or do you think he might be planning something more aggressive than that? I'm not sure if he could do it, though.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by this move because I wasn't really seeing Hikaru's knight or his bishop going to the f5 square anytime soon. You never want to play f5 yourself because this severely weakens the pawn on e5. Right. And also, I mean, I think it's unrealistic, but maybe some line in the future with something like bishop e6 and knight takes c5. I mean, this is not going to work, but you never know. Maybe at some point it will, right? So I don't know. I feel a little bit odd about this move, pawn to g6, but maybe he wants to go knight g7.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe some knight g7 and eventually not only cover that square, but maybe like knight g7, queen e7, knight e6, and try to hop into d4 or something like that. Although, of course, that will take a lot of time. And even then, Hikaru still has something like c3 if it comes down to it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so let's see what Hikaru is going to do here. Again, I'm having a hard time coming up with a move, because let's say you play a move like knight f1, trying to reroute the knight to e3. Then there's always the move b4 you have to deal with, and now you no longer have knight to c4.
But he still has the check, yeah.
Right, we do still have this check and bishop to c4. And Hikaru has decided to play the move a3. So this does allow b4, but I guess you aren't too concerned about losing this pawn.
Right. I mean, even if I lose that pawn temporarily, it feels like he'll be able to pick it up. As we mentioned, right, b4, he could still throw in the check, draw the bishop to c4. And for example, if they trade on c4, they trade on c4, he gets his knight there. He's going to easily regain the a3 pawn, and then Fedoseev's structure is going to be ruined. I think, it's hard, like as you mentioned, to come up with two, and Fedoseev has gone for b4. I was going to say it's hard to come up with too active a plan for either side. It's all very cagey play here, but we might see it start heating up a little bit. I am a little surprised by this b4 move, but I guess Vladimir has calculated out some concrete way to make it work, because to me it seems structurally a little dangerous if he doesn't have some kind of dynamic compensation for it.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised because Hikaru has this idea of bishop e6 to c4, and now after b takes bishop b takes a3, you can just recapture, because in case black takes on c4, we can recapture with the knight, and the bishop on a3 is defended, and all of a sudden white's pieces get active, and we have the better pawn structure. And bishop takes a3, as we speak, is on the board. Now, Fedoseev could take on a3, we take the bishop on a6, and here again, Hikaru's pawn structure is slightly better, and now his pieces are getting active. So I think this is definitely a good transition for him.
We do have opposite colored bishops, though, obviously with plenty of other things still on the board. But at least we do get a little bit more imbalance to the game. And Fedoseev doesn't seem to mind at all, drops the bishop to b4. Pretty annoying move, just pinning that knight. And I'm thinking, again, those knights on b8 and e8, they definitely got to move at some point. We were talking about this knight d6 move, maybe even knight g7 at some point. So it feels like both sides, both of their knights really, if they're, obviously Hikaru might want to utilize the c4 square. Fedoseev maybe wants to utilize some dark squares. We talked about this d4 square earlier. So to me, it almost seems like perhaps it's a race. Who can activate their horses here first? Perhaps that side will be fighting for the advantage.
Right. Yeah. So rook a1, good move by Hikaru. I think he wants to go for rook ed1, unpinning his rook. Probably eventually he's going to drop the bishop back to c3, maybe something like knight c4. And I think you would love to get the move c3 and to get a little bit more control over the dark squares and push that bishop away. But I think it's going to be difficult to achieve. Also, talking about the clock, we were saying earlier how Fedoseev had a slight edge, was up 1 or 2 minutes. But now Hikaru is taking the edge on the clock. So again, the game is definitely proceeding in the right direction. And Fedoseev is clearly struggling here.
Would you give Hikaru the objective advantage here, or just kind of perhaps the practical or optical advantage even? Where do you think it lands here?
I think the position is probably still objectively equal, but it feels like it's more difficult for Fedoseev to play, right? If Fedoseev does not play accurately here, Hikaru will have those long-term advantages. So I think practically right now he has the edge. And Fedoseev will have to play accurately here. But if he doesn't, he is just going to be objectively worse.
And I think, as you mentioned, that is reflected in the time usage. All of a sudden, he is not only equalizing the clock, he's down over a minute. And I think his long think signifies that he's realizing this is maybe not so simple. When he played b4, he probably was going for something like this position. But now Hikaru's rook a1 move is very, very nice because, as you mentioned, you can go rook d1, unpinning the rook. The rook at a1 does have a useful function on the a file. Bishop c3 here. I was even wondering, by the way, in the previous position, if he can even play something very crude like rook a4 and try to potentially double up against the a7 pawn. And now with bishop 2, and we do see that on the board, with bishop to c3, Vladimir is like encouraging this idea, although of course rook a1 is currently not possible. There may be some rook c4, I guess, at some point to kick that bishop out and add pressure to c6. So all of a sudden, the rook is even able to utilize these these weak squares in the position.
Exactly. And we see Fedoseev trading his knight for the bishop on a6, a slightly surprising decision. And we actually just got a really good question in the chat. Someone asked, what is the difference between an objective and a practical advantage? An objective advantage is generally one that's given by the computer, right? I mean, nobody can argue with the engines. But when we talk about a practical advantage, we usually mean that the computer probably says it's equal. It says 0.00, but it's easier to play for one of the players. And also what it very often means is that one player often has a lot of moves that are still equal for them, but the other player has a very narrow path as to how they can achieve equality. But as we speak, we have to move rook f1 on the board. A little bit surprising, but I guess he wants to go for knight c4 and make sure that his rook is never hanging. And now Fedoseev goes queen to b7, keeping an eye on the rook and making sure that this move is not possible. So I guess Hikaru is going to drop his rook back to a4.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Fedoseev can at some point jump with knight b5, maybe looking to put more pressure on some of those dark squares. But yeah, as we mentioned, speaking of practical versus, objective advantages, it's definitely a position where it feels like, practically speaking, like Hikaru's plans, lots of moves. He can move his knight to c4 potentially, or a5 even in some cases. Whereas Fedoseev might need to play precisely play some kind of active defensive moves, because if he's just kind of sitting on his position, and we see Hikaru playing these slightly awkward moves like rook f1, but they all serve to slowly start to get his pieces out. And if he's able to improve both his knights, then he will have definitely an objective advantage, as well as he's going to be able to play perhaps against the structure, perhaps against this restricted dark square bishop in some cases where it can't compete against the knight on the light squares. And yeah, we do see Hikaru taking a bit of time here. What do you think he's considering? Because as you mentioned, I just thought, okay, rook a4, the rook there is hanging on. He goes to knight b1. Okay.
Right, I was thinking about this move, but I wonder what the idea is in case Fedoseev plays, let's say, knight b5, defending the bishop on c3, and now also attacking the rook on a6. I guess you have to play rook a4 anyway, but now the knight on b1 looks awkward, right? You want that knight to be on c4, so I'm quite surprised by this move, knight b1. I thought he was just going to go rook a4, followed by knight c4, and I feel like white definitely has an edge here.
Right. Knight b1. Yeah, knight b5 looks very natural. First of all, you defend the bishop, but you also, more importantly, gain a tempo on that rook. And yeah, if Fedoseev doesn't go for it, he goes for bishop b4. Does Hikaru have some kind of ideas of even c3, b4? And that must be one of his ideas behind knight b1. He does maybe lose a little control over that c4 square, but he's able to also kick that bishop back. I mean, he can still play knight a3 or knight d2, knight c4. And that also, I think, will make it harder for Fedoseev to ever push his queenside pawns if he ever even planned to do so. So, yeah, because otherwise the knight on b1 doesn't really make a lot of sense. You can put it on c3, but the pawn on c6 completely blocks it from going any further. So I'm curious if he wants to get those pawns moving up the board.
Yeah, it's a good question on what Hikaru is going to do here. I would still like to go knight b2, but there's always the move knight b5, which is super annoying because there is the threat of knight to c3, which is hard to deal with. So Hikaru moves his
the other
knight
yes.
to go to c4. Interesting. But still, the knight on b1 is so passive.
Yeah, I think also maybe one of his ideas, I wonder if he'll do it here. He can play c3, right? Because the knight on d2, I was going to say, is now also covering the b3 square. Because earlier, the queen would be able to potentially take that pawn. So Hikaru is just kind of building this little fortress with those pawns, just not allowing black to utilize the dark squares, but it's also at the cost of his knights being a little bit passive here. But now, again, something like, is Fedoseev maybe looking to go queen d3, and then if he's able to put his rook there and double up, he's going to be putting a lot of pressure on that c3 pawn.
Yeah, I like that plan a lot, queen d3, to put pressure on the pawn on c3, and honestly, I don't know what Hikaru should do here. Again, where is the knight supposed to go? It's very difficult to get rid of this knight on b5. You never really want to go c4. because then the knight jumps into the d4 square. And how are you also getting this knight on b1 into the game? So Hikaru has got his work cut out here for him. Again, maybe knight b3 followed by c4, but there's always the move queen d3. And even in the endgames, the problems still continue. Maybe something like this, but there's perhaps rook f3.
Even rook d8, F5. Right? Just f5. That's a really nice move, right? Now you're creating all sorts of. This just looks wrong, right? Hikaru's pieces are suddenly all stuck on the queen side, and black would be able to get a lot of counterplay. In the game, Hikaru just played rook a2, so he's trying to bring that rook back from a4 just to cover some squares. Is there anything wrong with this queen d3 plan that we thought Fedoseev might be going for?
Well, I think here now you can also go c4, attack the knight, and
you get c5 with tempo.
Right, and everything is actually defended. The bishop has to move, and you take the pawn on a7. Black certainly has play, but he doesn't have anything direct. So Fedoseev goes for the move c5 himself. Pretty interesting, because now after the trade on b4, Hikaru will never have the option to go c4 and c5 anymore. And again, you don't want to go c4 here because knight d4. So I like this move by Fedoseev, and I think Hikaru has got to try to look for a way to keep things together and try to maybe bail out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this move I think is possible because of the currently passive state of Hikaru's knights. If that knight was like on c4, you can quickly, I think, go like 93, 95, and you would never want to play a move like c5. And again, it looks like so far this game, it never has strayed far from objective, relative equality. But it seems like both players are kind of trading this blow for blow. Like every time, Hikaru comes up with a plan, Fedoseev is able to, find these moves like c5 or like this knight b5, just kind of trying to get some kind of dynamic play. And now the clock time has again been equalized. So we do have this trade. Now both sides have in the far future, you can argue both sides have a pass pawn, a7 and c3. It looks like the a7 pawn is not really a weakness here, completely defended, so hard to imagine that ever being an issue. The pawn on c3 performs a really important task, defending that d4 square, but also, of course, it ties down Hikaru's knight right now in b1. So, again, seems like things are simplifying, but still lots of pieces on the board, and this bishop versus knight imbalance, the pawn imbalance. I'm not really sure what to make of this. I see that the evaluation here is slightly in Hikaru's favor, but I almost have to say that I feel like I like black here almost. Just he goes rook c8, maybe rook d8. Maybe you can help me understand why the engine is disagreeing with me.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Like, it looks pretty comfortable for black. The knight on b1 is still passive. We see Hikaru going for knight e3. I was also considering the move rook d1, right? Why wouldn't you bring the rook into the game with tempo? But perhaps maybe a move like queen e6 was something that concerned him, because then you can no longer play knight e3 comfortably because your rook on a2 is hanging in case you recapture with the queen. So probably that's why he played knight e3. Fedoseev decided not to take. I feel like if he wants to make a draw, bishop takes e3 is a very safe option. But he goes queen e6, and now Hikaru has the opportunity to keep his knight on the board with knight at d5. And also some people in the chat were saying earlier that Hikaru can try to flag him. I mean, that is possible, but it's very unlikely because the players have 3 seconds of bonus time after every move. So let's see whether, and there we have with knight d5, and now knight at d6. So maybe Fedoseev is going all in on this f5 idea?
Yeah, and you also mentioned yourself that, if he wants to draw, he just takes that knight, removes a bit of imbalance, removes this knight d5 idea. So do you think Fedoseev is going for more, with this, by not going for that trade, or is he just trying to play what he thinks are the objectively best moves and not necessarily thinking about like, oh, I'm forcing a draw or not?
Yeah, I think he is just playing the position, so just playing the moves he finds best, but also probably he senses the opportunity. Like Hikaru has been struggling a little bit, and now we see him taking on e4. We can't quite recapture because then we lose the knight on... Oh, wait, actually you can. You can go this line because...
Oh, rook d1. Wow.
But it's not easy at all. Can you just play... You can also play c4, solidifying the knight first and then taking here. But yeah, it's tough position. And also Fedoseev is up 30 seconds on the clock.
I feel like this pressure he's generating against the f2 square is extremely annoying. If white is able to put this knight at e4, then I think, you're very solid, right? That's an outpost. You cover the f2 square. But it's not so simple here, right? I mean, okay, now you are threatening knight e4, but if maybe Fedoseev just moves his queen away from that pin, I don't know, something like queen f7 or queen f5 even, right? Just even
Oh,
more
but queen
active.
f5 runs into this knight
Oh,
e7
okay.
takes a fork. So I think queen
Okay, can't do
f7
that
is
one.
better. And also what's super instructive after the move queen f7, let's say we take an e4, Fedoseev is 100% going to play the move bishop d4 because look at this piece. It's putting pressure on the pawn on f2. It's defending the pawn on a7 and the pawn on e5. So this bishop on d4 is really keeping everything together for Fedoseev. That being said, his king is slightly exposed, and if Hikaru can somehow make his way through, that could spell some trouble for Fedoseev, who is now in the tank. They're both just below 2 minutes.
Yeah, going to the wire, c4, and yeah, I like this queen f7 move a lot, especially that move, that great move you showed, bishop d4. You know, it's funny, we think about, oh, knights, they're the pieces that go in the outpost, but you look at that bishop on d4, it's obviously not any worse. So I guess I'm kind of, and Fedoseev's time is really getting lower here. Again, like as we mentioned, he might not flag. I mean, he certainly won't flag with 3-second increment. That doesn't mean that time isn't going to cause you to make a mistake, right? Playing under the duress, 5 seconds on the clock. It was queen d7. I'm trying to think, is there any difference? I mean, I guess queen f7 I kind of like because it seems like you're adding a little bit of pressure on that f file. I guess queen d7, don't see anything inherently wrong with it in that line that you mentioned. He could still play something like bishop to d4. Perhaps we'll see that. What do you think is his idea? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by the move queen to d7. I'm wondering if he's perhaps looking at knight takes c4. However, I really do not have a good feeling about this. The idea, of course, is that white cannot... Or wait, can you... No, you can't, right? I mean, you take an f8, but there's still king g7. And in the meantime, Hikaru has taken... We see a trade on d4. And now queen e2 back by Hikaru. I feel like Hikaru is starting to get the upper hand a little bit, especially because he's up so much time on the clock now.
So one thing that I'm wondering about, if I'm playing white and I'm trying to think about how could I possibly, win the game, this is a little far-fetched. It's going to take some time, but Black's king is, slightly weakened with the disappearance of this f-pawn. I mean, my dream, again, I don't think Fedoseev will ever let me do this, but if I can go like h4, h5, eventually, even like try to, remove that pawn guard, king g2, rook h1, of course, extremely difficult to do this. Then I can imagine Black's king being a little bit of an issue. This bishop in d4, it's very strong, but the pawn in e5 does shut it out slightly from the defense. Saying all that, I don't know if that would be possible, right? If he would be able to do anything like that. So the rook at f1 also can't move because of the pressure on f2. The rook at a4, I was going to say, was kind of tied down to the c4 pawn, or at least the queen on e2 now. So how can really Hikaru make progress here? Is it just going to take some slip up from Vladimir, or do you think there's a constructive plan he can try here?
Yeah, and he went back to the a4 square. Now Fedoseev went queen to d7, attacking the rook. Hikaru here could have repeated the position with rook to a6. I don't know if there was a silent draw offer by Fedoseev, but he goes rook a2, rook f7, and now I like what Hikaru is doing. He goes king to g2, and I think his idea is to go pawn f3 to make sure that Fedoseev no longer has all that pressure on the f2 pawn. We see queen c6, attacking the pawn. Hikaru defends it with rook to c2, but now that you've moved your rook away from the a file, Fedoseev...
That's a great move, a5, yeah.
Oh, but queen e4, I like this move by Hikaru because perhaps he wants to go pawn f4 to try to undermine the bishop on d4. And it's kind of funny. We were explaining in depth how this bishop on d4 is so strong, but some people in the chat summarized it very quickly. They said it's a wooden shield.
That's true. I always forget my basic chess terminology. I have to do a little refresher. Wooden shield on d4. I really like this a5 move by Vlad. That's super GM awareness, because I feel like you're so focused on maintaining the position, and he just notices, his Hikaru's rook moved, time to run this pawn down the board, and things are really heating up. These guys got 30 seconds. Hikaru's won a pawn, but the a pawn's all the way at a3 now. So this is pretty crazy. I feel like now both sides have significantly improved their winning chances, right, compared to before. Definitely seems like we're gonna have a decisive game, especially with this time in the clock. But if Hikaru, that pawn doesn't promote, his e pawn is gonna be as dangerous.
Wait, can
right?
you play e6? Can you? Oh, he played rook d1. Wait, but this is a blunder. Fedoseev had rook d5.
Wow.
d5, because if you take, there's pawn a2.
There's
but
a2.
Look at this. Hikaru missed the opportunity to go pawn to e6, attack the rook. And now if you take the rook on c1, we take the rook on d7, and this rook is hanging as well. I wonder what's happening after rook to d6 though. But apparently you just go here. Again, super difficult because in case black takes, there's e7. But
Jeez.
both sides are blundering now. Rook d1, rook e8, queen f3, and king g7. King g7 to me seems a bit panicky.
Yeah, I mean, he's got both sides have what, like 20 to 10 seconds there. And with this A pawn, I mean, it feels, I mean, Fedoseev's king's a little open. Hikaru has to constantly deal with this passed A pawn. Not anymore. He loses it. Okay, so now is everything just simplifying? They're moving extremely quickly. Yeah.
But I would still give the slight edge to Hikaru. Wait, is there knight of 6 by any no, queen e93. This is a draw offered by Hikaru, all the traits, and
they're simplifying. Okay, certainly a draw here. Yeah, and they just agreed to it. Wow, that was, I think, an extremely well-played game. Both sides, it seemed like first Fedoseev maybe was to win, and for sure with that rook d5 tactic, and then Hikaru, like you pointed out, there was some e6 in between move. They didn't, in such a sharp position, both players just probably did not have enough time to work out these tactics. But if we, I guess we can go back real quick. They were moving so fast. I didn't register all the moves even in my mind, but yeah, this moment here where there was a win for Fedoseev and then perhaps one for Hikaru as well.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to really, at least be even with your opponent on the clock, because at some point, one of the players is going to get low on time and they're going to make mistakes. And if the opponent also makes mistakes, it's fine. But if you're getting low, you're making mistakes, your opponent still has like a couple minutes, they're going to punish you. But here, both players weren't really able to punish each other. But after a3, let's have a look. So it takes bishop b2. And again, here Hikaru had to move e6. As we said, black cannot take the rook on c1 because you take on d7. The rook is hanging and the bishop on c1. And if you go rook to d6, I was thinking for a moment, maybe you can take here and go queen e5. But you can't go knight e7 because the knight is pinned. So what you do instead is you just move your rook over to e1, defend this pawn a little bit more. Now you really want to go e7. And black doesn't have anything. If you take here, now there's e7. And the tactics seem to work out for white, but super difficult to figure out with little time on the clock. Then after rook d1, Fedoseev missed the opportunity to take here. Because let's say you take everything, you can never take with the c pawn, because that leaves your rook on c2 hanging. And if you take the rook, there's always a2, and you lose a piece. And this will still require work, but I think black should be winning this. But after rook e8, I think maybe Fedoseev was better, but there wasn't anything clear. And especially after bishop takes a5, the game was headed for a draw.
Yeah, looks like, I mean, those lines with e6, e7, like two in-between moves, really hard to figure, because if you don't have that e7 move, right, you're just going to be losing in that position. So, yeah, very difficult for the players to figure that out with 10 seconds on the clock. But overall, it seemed like a really well-played game for both sides. It seemed like perhaps even Fedoseev, like, he was even pushing at something, a5, a4, he really, perhaps he didn't even need to do that, but he found his chance to get this counterplay. Hikaru, as always, found in any position, he's a complete wizard at finding play. I didn't think of that F4 idea at all that even allowed him to get the extra pawn. I'm looking at this bishop d4. I'm thinking it's never assailable. All of a sudden, it's getting completely undermined. So, yeah, that was Fedoseev with the black pieces. I feel like the color of this game was not really felt all that much, especially with Hikaru's kind of slow-paced opening choice, which we have seen him do before. He's just kind of transferring the game to the middle game, right, where it's going to be all about your chess skills and not necessarily any theory or anything like that. But looks like fair result at the end of that, and I'm curious to see if Fedoseev is going to try to play really aggressively with white after this game. Maybe he'll be feeling good, or if he's just I don't know, go to keep it close to the vest, because it is a best of 4 and he doesn't need to go all out or anything like that just yet.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to try with the white pieces. He will not force a draw or anything. But given the fact that it's a match, he will probably try to push controlledly. He's not going to go all out. He's maybe going to play some sort of Catalan, try to get a small edge. And as we speak, Hikaru was just in the chat. He said that the next game is going to be in 10 minutes, and he hopes that all of us are enjoying the coverage. Also, let's have a look at some of the other games. So here we see that Levon Aronian won his game against Wesley So. So big result. Levon very convincingly still won with 6.5 minutes on the clock, while Wesley So was down to his last 7 seconds. And oh,
And Artemiev
Magnus.
has defeated Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, Artemiev is a player that we don't see a whole lot of. Also because he's a Russian, he's not getting a lot of invites. And also, I remember he was already 2700 or very close to 2700 a lot of years ago, but he kind of got stuck there. But in Rapid and Blitz, again, he's also an absolute beast, and we see it here in the game against Magnus. He beats him with the black pieces. Now, this is far from over, but beating Magnus with the black pieces is huge. And yeah, it's going to be tough for Magnus to come back here.
Yeah, this is a guy, as you mentioned, that, maybe we don't see him around that much. You look at his rating, okay, he's 2701, that's obviously a very strong player, but, we got 2800, Magnus here, but Artemiev is one of clearly the best speed players in the world. So he's an extremely dangerous opponent. And yeah, game one with the black pieces obviously is going to be, it's not over, obviously, but that is such a huge momentum. It's funny because we're actually seeing two players so far have won with black, right? First, Levon Aronian against Wesley So, now Artemiev against Magnus. So interesting to see that, normally we think in these match strategy, okay, you play solid with black, you try to push for white, but also, again, we don't know exactly what happened in this game, but it sometimes happens that when your opponent pushes, they may also give you those counter chances and you are able to turn the tables on them as well. And do we have one more match in this bracket as well?
Right, yes.
I think Fabiano, right? He was the winner of the Division 2 last time against Likwang Lim. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Fabiano Caruana, he drew his game against Likwang Liam, the head coach of Webster University. They won the Final Four yesterday. But yeah, this game ends in a draw. Good result for Liam, I would say. I mean, if you're playing with black and you play Fabiano Caruana in a match, definitely a draw is a good result. And also, as we were talking, Hikaru was just in the chat. He said that the next match is going to be in 7 minutes. He's got to go. And he gave a big shout out to all of us that are watching. And he called everyone the true fans here on Kick. Also, he was in the chat earlier and he said, didn't see E6, E7, the line that we were talking about apparently winning. See y'all later. And yeah, I'm sure he is disappointed with that. But again, that's kind of what happens in rapid chess when both players get low on time. But Fedoseev also missed some chances. So I think a draw is probably a fair result. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I'm sure Hikaru was a bit disappointed to see he missed this E6, E7 move, but I also think he saw, oh, wait a minute, if Rook takes D5 was on the board, that would have been game over right there. So yeah, again, if they both had their chances, as you said, the draw, I think, is a fair result. Could have gone either way there. So yeah, I don't think he's too disappointed in that. Also, I was going to add another small little tidbit here as you were looking over Caruana game against Liam. Fabiano is obviously someone that you are also very familiar with. We talked about this earlier today. Pro Chess League, that is your teammate right there. I know you guys have had many battles together on board 1 and 2. And he's actually, funnily enough, playing Liam, who is also on the Gotham Knights. So lots of good representation here for our teams here, and perhaps a preview of a future matchup as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like all these matches today, it's a lot of St. Louis Archbishops and the Gotham Knights, and also even the commentators here are like, I'm on the St. Louis Archbishops, you're on the Gotham Knights. But yeah, a lot of interesting battles here. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, the St. Louis Archbishops and the Gotham Knights are squaring off in the quarterfinals of the Pro Chess League. So that's going to be a very exciting matchup. I've got to say, you guys did a great job assembling the team, getting guys like Fedoseev, who I think is a little bit underrated with his classical rating. Like you said before, in Rapid Chess, he's rated around 2750. And we see here how Hikaru is struggling with him. And yeah, I think the second game is also going to be super interesting. But yeah, this game between Fabiano and Likwang Liam. Wait, Liam lost a pawn early on in the opening, but he still managed to save this one. That's a big miss by Fabiano. I'm sure he's going to be a little bit disappointed, let's put it that way, about this game. Because, I mean, you're up a clear pawn. Like, normally black has a pawn on b6 here, and white is arguing that maybe they're slightly better. But this should be technically winning, I would think, even though it still requires quite a bit of work.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, he lost the pawn, but maybe then that in b7 is, out of play. But then the knight came back to c4, and this just looks, like I mean, and not only is he up a pawn with a better structure, he's up 6 minutes on the clock, 4 minutes on the clock. So pretty unbelievable. How did Liam manage to hold this, right? Did he build a fortress? I mean, it looks completely improbable. Let's
I
see.
don't know. Like, it feels like Fabiano is cleanly converting the game. He's up 2 minutes on the clock. Maybe he relaxed too early. That's the only explanation I can think of. But here, yeah, you can just start pushing your pawns on the queen side. The one thing that's a little bit tricky in rapid chess is that even though your opponent can be low on time, you might have a winning position, but eventually you're gonna get low on time as well, right? It's very difficult to, like, let's say you have 2 minutes against 10 seconds. Like, your opponent's living off the increment, and either you're gonna keep blitzing with him, or if you take your time, you'll also get low, and then anything can happen. He walked his king over. All still looks very clean. G4, good move by Liam, creating some
At
kind
least
of
some kind of counterplay, yeah.
but it was really this move, pawn takes f5, that threw away a large part of his advantage. Actually, there's no reason, because Liam it's never really in his best interest to take, because then the king comes closer. So I'm really surprised that Fabiano went for this. He could have also pushed here, but yeah, to his credit, Liam did a great job fighting on here and trying to create chance, and it paid off in the end.
Yeah, even here, I guess I guess maybe he missed there was like a knight takes f5 tactic, right? Like pawn e5. Yeah, like right here he played king e. I don't know. Oh, maybe it wasn't available. Oh yeah, sorry, it's check.
You mean
I was gonna
this?
say, yeah, there exactly. Maybe he missed something like this. Yeah, some knight f5 g2 idea. But yeah, as you said, it's taking an f5 there was unnecessary because f4 wasn't even a threat, right? I would be afraid of these pawns going down the board together. But again, all kudos to Liam here. You know, he's got nothing to lose. You know, he's got nothing to gain by resigning. So he's trying his last trick here. And Fabiano, 48 seconds on the clock, I guess, just might have overlooked one of these, knight fork tactics here from Liam. And then it turned out to be a draw, even though he was down 2 pawns, right? Still not a given, but I don't want to say lucked out, but yeah, this position here, right? You're up 2 pawns. You think it's winning after they simplify, but somehow he was able to save that too.
Yeah, apparently here Liam should have saved the game with king h6 and pawn c6, but he went for knight d4. So we get into this knight endgame where white is up 2 pawns, but it looks super difficult because if you lose any of these two, it's a draw right away. Fabiano pushes his pawn. I guess you cannot hang on to the pawn, so eventually you'll have to walk your king over. And then you get into this endgame where white has the b pawn, and black's king is super far away. So of course you never want to trade your pawn for the knight, then it's a draw immediately. But maybe you're still winning if you just walk the king over. I don't know. To me, it feels like probably a draw. Like, it's so difficult to make progress here. I don't know. The computer is giving white a big advantage, but I don't see it. And honestly, like, it's saying king e4 +6, but when I make the move, it goes all the way down to 0. So very difficult to figure out what exactly is going on here.
Yeah, and especially at this point, both players are going to be playing off the increment. I mean, I feel like Liam's moves are simpler. He's like, all right, I have to sacrifice my knight for the pawn, right? And it's up to Fabiano to come up with a way to prevent that, which is obviously going to be not so simple. And yeah, with the knight in a3, this looks like very drawish unless you blunder some kind of fork. Oh, and as they say that,
but
it looks
he
like
did
doesn't make any
blunder.
sense. Yeah.
Oh, knight a3 is completely off because look at
So
this.
apparently king c5, knight c4, right? And then you kick that knight back, and now you can go b5, b6, I assume, or no?
Right, but the problem also for black is, what do you even play here? You cannot
you can't bring
play
the
king e5. So you have to
Yeah.
go king g5, which is super awkward. Knight c4 was played, knight b1. Now here you cannot push the pawn, because if you do, black goes knight c3 and picks up the pawn. So he played king d4, correct. But here, he should have just pushed this pawn. Wait. Oh, actually, this is pretty elementary, I feel. Like king d3, king e6, and king c2. And you trap the knight. Black still has king d5. Now, if you take this as a draw, but you go knight e3, and if you go here, I take, and you're not in time. And if you go here, then we have knight c2. So that is definitely a big miss by Fabiano.
Sorry to interrupt you, Benjamin, but we do have the start to Vladimir against Hikaru. But yeah, for sure, as you were saying that, I mean, I was even saying, oh, it's a draw, and then as we played through it, it turned out to be a whole roller coaster. But with all that being said, we now have Hikaru with the black pieces. And Fedoseev looks like he's playing an extremely solid opening, right? The 4-knight Scotch. This is an opening that I think has very big draw tendencies. Not that necessarily Fedoseev is trying to force a draw, in the first 10 moves, but he's trying to play a very risk-free type of game.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, he's trying to take all the risk out of the position. Hikaru goes for this move bishop to g4. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the main move here is the move f3, and Hikaru had this against someone recently. I forgot against whom. And after bishop h5, the line goes, I think it was maybe against Dubov at the World Rapid and Blitz. d4, you get back one pawn, and eventually you get back the other pawn as well. White can maybe argue that they're slightly better with the bishop pair, but Fedoseev goes for this move knight at e2, trying to hope to take Hikaru out of book. Hikaru now takes, and after h3, bishop h5, c4. Fedoseev is still blitzing, so this definitely must be his preparation. And it's always slightly easier to play with white, because white has 1, 2 pawn islands, and black has 1, 2, 3 pawn islands. So white is the slightly better pawn structure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Hikaru has had multiple games on both sides of this. I think I remember one of these tour events, he was playing a match against, I failed to remember who the exact player was, but I think he did play this in one of his games. White, in general, I feel like recently, in the past several years, this has been an extremely popular line in rapid play chess for top players. I guess, it's roughly equal, but like you said, always slightly easier to play for white. And when you are playing, speed format, that counts for a lot, just the simplicity of your play. And that line you pointed out with the move f3, with the 2 bishops, I think that has been extremely explored. It simplifies into an endgame, maybe slight edge for white, but I think most games end in a draw there. So Fedoseev comes prepared with a slight wrinkle, this h3, c4. He's hoping to, in a dream world, it looks like they have made the trade on c4. I was going to say this is something that looks like white really wants. Now you have the c7, a7 pawn as targets, and black is going to need to play relatively actively to make up for it. We do see this queen e7 move. Maybe Hikaru can draw back to d6 and try to look for threats on the king side. But this to me is a flip of their previous game, where we were saying, well, Hikaru has a structural advantage. Fedoseev needs to play actively to maintain the balance. Now it seems like Fedoseev has a structural advantage, and Hikaru needs to play actively to maintain, equality.
Exactly. You see queen a4 by Fedoseev putting some pressure on this bishop. And now Hikaru takes on e2, and he plays the move bishop to c5. A little bit surprising. He's depriving white's dark square bishop of the e3 square and putting some pressure here. But it really feels like after the move bishop f3, Fedoseev holds all the trumps here. He's got the slightly better pawn structure. Again, we have these isolated pawns on c7 and a7. And also he's got the 2 bishops. This bishop can still develop, let's say, to f4 or g5, or even with b3 and bishop b2. So I don't know. The opening battle is definitely for Fedoseev here. And Hikaru, I feel like in this game, he can maybe make a draw. It feels like white probably has a risk-free advantage here.
Yes, and he's no longer blitzing, but Fedoseev has built up a 2-minute time advantage. Saying that, I think Hikaru obviously recognizes that he's a little worse here, but he just wants to make a practical decision. He burned some time on the clock, and he just went for something that he thought, okay, I'm going to be worse here, but I'm going to be able to kind of dig in and hold on. As you mentioned, though, 2 bishops, better pawn structure. Fedoseev is obviously going to be looking to press. Saying that, if I'm looking at black's position, I noticed the square in d4. We did see in the previous game Fedoseev put his bishop there. Perhaps Hikaru can, at some point, play bishop d4 and c5, and that's going to be a very powerful square for him. So it's not like he's completely devoid of ideas. And if he's able to maybe even like rook d6, rook d8, bishop d4, kind of build on these dark squares, perhaps that knight at f6 can also reposition itself somewhere, then he will also, I think, have his fair share of chances.
Yeah, and also right now, it's actually a little bit difficult for white to develop this bishop, because let's say you go bishop f4. This is a big mistake due to rook d4 double attack on the queen and the bishop. And in case you go bishop g5, we just go h6. Now, if you take an f6, black is going to be completely fine. And if you go bishop h4, again, we have this tactic with rook to d4, which, like, white still has the bailout here with bishop takes f6, but then black is completely fine. So Fedoseev plays the clever move. He goes queen to c2, dropping his queen back first, keeping an eye on the bishop. And now I'm sure that if Hikaru moves his bishop back to, let's say, b6, he's looking at something like bishop to d2 or bishop f4. And again, it looks pretty pleasant for Fedoseev. He's up almost 2 minutes on the clock. He's got the bishop pair and the better pawn structure.
Also, as you mentioned, bishop d2, perhaps bishop d2, bishop c3. Then you have the double ops, right? Bishop f3, bishop c3. crisscrossing the board. And the other thing is that it feels like all the trades, if in the future, Fedoseev is going to play like rook d1, rook e1, feels like all these trades are going to benefit white as they get closer to the end game, where he will try to use the bishops here. So yeah, Hikaru a little bit in the tank here. I'm looking at his camera. He looks very, very focused, wanting to come up with the proper idea here. One thing that I'm wondering about, again, the knight f6 is not a bad piece, of course, but it feels like I would love to get it, somewhere more actively if possible, but just doesn't seem to be a square there. I mean, something like getting it to d4, again, I've mentioned that square a couple times, would be nice, but it takes so many moves to do that it doesn't seem reasonable. Cargo's queen e5. Do you think he's planning like bishop d6 here, or maybe just, I don't know, what else could it be?
I think he's also just restricting the development of this dark squared bishop, because now you cannot go to e3 because we take. F4 is also not available, also not a g5. And there's also no b3 followed by bishop to b2. However, there is the move bishop to d2, and you can follow it up with bishop to c3. Maybe he wants to go bishop d4 here, put some pressure here, but now maybe white just plays something like rook a e1, attacking the queen, and in case the queen moves, let's say here, white can now play b3, and it looks like white has a pretty stable structural advantage. So I am really curious what he has in mind after the move bishop to d2.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned that b3 is not possible, right? But bishop d2 seems to have the same exact idea. And yeah, I wonder what Fedoseev is calculating himself. I mean, the bishop in d2 is temporarily slightly loose, but there's pressure from the rook at d8. But at the same time, I cannot even imagine what what tactical idea there could be. So yeah, interesting to see him take some time. He does play it eventually, bishop d2. Obviously, also something like rook e1 is an idea as well to get a tempo in the queen. Rook d1 is simple as well. So yeah, interesting to see. And the thing is, I think for Hikaru is that it is difficult to come up with something truly active. So it feels like you just kind of have to sit and defend. Obviously, it's not indefensible, but it is going to be slightly unpleasant for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so bishop d2 played by Fedoseev. I just wanted to point out maybe one idea he could have is in case white goes rook to b1. Here we can go for bishop d6, threatening checkmate, and in case you go g3, now we go queen e6, and you fork the pawns on h3 and a2, which I think solves a lot of your problems, because here, at the very least, you have a pawn to show for all of the trumps white has. But bishop d2, good move by Fedoseev. Now we see bishop d4, and I'm sure Fedoseev is looking at moving a rook to e1, whether it's going to be the a rook or the f rook. I think it makes a lot of sense to move the a rook, because now black never has real pressure on the pawn on f2 because it's still defended by the rook on f1.
Yeah, there's this funny move. If you go rook fe1, it's not a great move, but you could play queen g3 just to highlight, some potential tactical possibilities. But saying that, it's not really doing too much. Just kind of obviously, even a simple move like bishop e3 would take care of that. But as you mentioned, just playing rook ae1 completely eliminates any pressure there. Hikaru though plays bishop d4. Yeah, so he has played bishop d4. Excuse me. And I do like that move, again, because bishop c3 seemed really annoying, so you kind of take that out of the equation. And if you play rook ae1 now, perhaps you go queen d6, then you're threatening like a bishop takes b2 idea. So just kind of staying annoying, not really letting white maybe easily just set up their pieces, and trying to get Fedoseev to be precise in his reorganization.
Yeah, so queen e6 makes a lot of sense. We can also try to strengthen that bishop with the move pawn to c5. But maybe here white can play a move like b4, right? We can still play c5, and I feel like trading off some pawns could be in our favor to make sure that we no longer have that weak c-pawn. But white could play the move c5, and now they can try pushing their pawns all the way up. We have the passed c-pawn, but it's not really going anywhere. And if white creates a passed b-pawn or a-pawn, that's going to be super strong in case it's defended, or supported rather, by the bishops, the one on f3, and maybe in case you can get the other one to f4 at some point. We have some moves. We have the move rook ae1. Fedoseev, and instantly queen to b5 by Hikaru. So what is his idea in case Fedoseev goes b3 or b4?
Yeah, that b4 move that you pointed out, that is definitely a lot more ambitious and probably just objectively stronger, because all of a sudden now, especially with the queen on b5, you can get some additional tempi with a4. Even bishop c6 becomes an idea in some lines. You don't have this move rook e8 available. Or, again, b4 does look fantastic here, but even the simple b3, right? You kind of passing the move back. Perhaps then Hikaru can use the idea that I forecasted many moves ago, and we have that on the like c5 here, right? Just kind of try to at least maintain this one powerful piece on d4. But saying that, b4 does look like a fantastic move, and I believe that Fedoseev has just played it. So very, very principled and strong play here. And again, this queen on b5 does seem to be a little bit oddly placed now, as it could fall prey to these tempi from white.
Yeah, b4, great move by Fedoseev. And now if you go c5, white can go a4 with a tempo. And in case of queen b6, maybe you just go b5. And again, white is holding all the trumps here. This pawn on c5 is not really going anywhere. And white would love to follow up with, let's say, queen c4, followed by a5, getting full control over the position. And again, black has this bishop on d4, but that's really the only thing. This knight is not really going anywhere. And if white can get these pawns pushing with a5 and b6, black is in big trouble. So I'm really curious to see what Hikaru is going to do here. He's also down a minute on the clock, but it looks like this opening has gone terribly wrong for him.
Yeah, and credit to Fedoseev. I was saying, oh, it's such a safe line, no risk, but he is showing that, especially with good preparation, able to play a little bit of a sideline there. A slight imprecision from black, and all of a sudden you are going to have to be defending the entire game. So far in this match, I mean, we talked, it was not empty praise for his abilities. He is certainly up there with the best of them, and he's showing it. Also, to go back to the format, right? You mentioned early on, and we looked at the bracket. You have Hikaru and Carlson on opposite sides. That is because they are the 1 and 2 seeds. They finished. They were both finalists in the previous Champions Tour bracket stage, so that's why they got seeding in there. And then the rest of the players also fought their way there through various means. Fedoseev was able to, I believe, get second place in the qualifier that took place for out of like 60 other grandmasters. So him and Lekwang Lem, I believe, finished first and second, and so he showed he got here through a very, very gritty 9-round event. So obviously he is very, very battle tested. Of course, with all that praise to Vladimir, all praise must go to Hikaru as well, who is very well known to be extremely difficult to beat. He is no stranger in escaping from this is nothing compared to some of the positions he has escaped from. So obviously I wouldn't be counting him out yet, but Vladimir is definitely playing phenomenal chess here.
Yeah, no, great game so far by Fedoseev. But yeah, like I said, even when Hikaru has a bad position, you will still keep finding little problems to make it as difficult as possible for his opponent to put him away. Bishop b6, I guess the idea is that in case Vladimir goes a4 here, now he wants to go queen to d3, and I guess this could alleviate some of the pressure. The pawns on b4 and a4 can become slight targets, and as we speak, we have the move a4 on the board, and I'm sure Hikaru is going to go queen to d3 because it's the only move that makes sense. And now Fedoseev has to trade, so we're going into the endgame. But yeah, Fedoseev, he did a phenomenal job making his way into this championship. And yeah, like I said, he's no stranger to rep chess. He's an absolute beast, and he's showing it right here in this game. I mean, he's playing great chess so far.
I think Hikaru does go queen d3, but does this really help his position? Again, just trade, and then you still have this issue, of course, after this bishop moves on d2 with some a5. It feels like without the queens, I could be wrong about it, so maybe this would be your opportunity to give me a little bit of free grandmaster advice. But I was going to say, in these types of in the earlier position we had, feels like these queen trades are good for white. You remove any sort of counterplay from the opponent, and you get closer to hopefully being able to put more pressure on these weak pawns. And feels like having the queens on the board does give black a little bit more defense and offense. So for me, I think the queen trade is something that I would be trying to go for if I'm playing white.
Yeah, I think generally white is happy to trade of the queens when you have such a structural advantage. However, here again, like the pawns on b4 and a4 are a little bit tough to defend, and also this bishop is lacking a good square. Where do you go? If you go to f4, then again, there's rook to d4, and you lose this pawn. And you don't quite want to trade on f6. I feel like this also throws away a big part of Fedoseev's advantage. And I feel like Hikaru should be able to hold here. He has gone for the trade, but now the worst is behind Hikaru. I'm really surprised by what Fedoseev has done, because the pawn on b4 is still weak if we can go rook to b8. You can go b5 so that rook b8 can be met with bishop to c6. But let's say Hikaru plays something like, I don't know, rook b8, bishop c6, and rook to d2. I don't think you should be too worried. And I think like Hikaru is going to hold this a large percentage of the time.
Yeah, it feels like he'll hold this actually very easily. Obviously, with the opposite color bishops on the board, this bishop on d4 is completely unassailable. I'm really shocked by this bishop f6 decision, and even bishop g5, right? Because Fedoseev must have planned that right there. Also, Benjamin, what about even a move like earlier bishop c3? Was that possible with a double attack on in the line you were showing with b5?
Oh, yeah,
some kind of bishop c3 move. So
right, bishop c3, that solves all the problems right away. I mean, yeah, black wins a pawn. White shouldn't ever lose this, but now neither should Hikaru. So I'm very surprised by how Fedoseev has thrown this away, right? Because with the move bishop b6, Hikaru makes it very clear that he wants to go for the queen trade, and Fedoseev can choose like whether he wants to allow it or not. He decided to allow it. That's completely fine. But he didn't have a follow-up in mind. I mean, the move bishop to g5 runs into the very simple h6. And trading off into this endgame really doesn't seem like the way. And also here after a5, bishop d4, it seems like he's completely drifted. And now bishop c3. How does white actually not lose a pawn here?
I guess you could just go rook d1 or something, trade him off, and.
But then I still take and go bishop c3. You still lose a pawn.
Yeah, I was gonna say wait, rook d7. Yeah, we just vacuum them all off. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But again, like here. You would still rather be white here, because white has a better pawn structure, but nothing is really going to happen here. This game is just going to end in a draw. So this is a big save for Hikaru, and this, again, shows why he's so difficult to beat in these knockout matches. Even when he gets himself position, he keeps finding these resources to make it as difficult as possible for his opponent. But definitely a big miss by Fedoseev. If Hikaru wins this match, Fedoseev will definitely be thinking to himself, like, I should have definitely put more pressure in game number 2.
And rook takes d5 in game number 1, of course, if he has reviewed that game. It seems like, after h6, I'm thinking back, he can't, as you mentioned, the bishop is actually kind of short on squares. If you go to the 4th rank, there was that double attack with rook d4. I guess he had to play bishop c1. I wonder if he just thought that was too passive. Yeah, if you can go back just a moment here. He should have
probably done it here.
Right away, right? Like, because he just gave Hikaru a free, tempo, free left with h6. And here you would have retained all the advantages of his position. Also, the bishop in c1 here, it's on the back rank, but, it prevents rook d2, right? No pressure in f2 or something like that. And, now he can play rook d1 if it was his move. But it looks like in the game, he just kind of decided not to try to press his position. I think we do have they are exactly following the variation you just showed, Benjamin. We have all these trades. And I wonder if Fedoseev is going to try to play this out. Like if he can put his bishop on the d5 square, he could put some pressure on f7. But I would imagine that everything on the same side of the board here, it's going to be close to impossible to even generate remotely any winning chances.
Exactly. We see bishop c5 by Hikaru. I'm sure Fedoseev is looking at the move bishop to d5, putting some pressure here. But Hikaru can just play something like f5, followed by king g7, f6. And this should be a pretty comfortable draw. That being said, again, you would rather have white here because black is so stuck. We have rook to c7. And now let's see where Hikaru is going to go. Maybe bishop to b6. And that's what he goes for. Are they going for a repetition here?
I think Fedoseev might try a little bit. He has no risk, right? But the thing is for Hikaru, even if somehow he loses a pawn, the drawing tendency is still extremely high here with the opposite color bishop. So he does play bishop h5. I don't think that's a surprise. He has 0 ways to really mess this up, unless he blunders one of the pieces. But saying that, even if it,
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I like the move bishop to h5, because now in case of f5, rook b5 just runs into rook c8, right? So I guess there's not much he can do. I was going to say bishop h5, because now that the bishop is not on d5, the rook is attacking this pawn. But rook c8 really just holds everything together. And I think this is definitely the plan Hikaru should go for. Otherwise, you're just a little bit too cramped, I feel.
I was going to say, what if I don't even do anything? And it looks like Hikaru's gone back to d6. It looks obviously a little passive and unpleasant maybe, but okay, what is Fedoseev's plan? He can bring his king up the board. If he pushes his pawns, at some point he's just going to be opening himself up to more trades. So I wonder if even Hikaru just sits in the position, maybe Vladimir just doesn't have enough resources. And I think we see Hikaru just recognizing that and not even bothering with the f5 move.
right? So let's say that's going to happen, right? So let's say Fedoseev goes f4,
Mhm.
Hikaru sits with, I don't know, bishop a3, you go king up, you sit, Fedoseev goes here. Like, let's say white gets everything he wants, right? And still the question becomes,
Mhm.
what is, I mean, the one plan you can go for here is, let's say, putting your bishop on d5, and now you go g4 and you go g5, and as you can see, the eval bar is slowly creeping up. Like, this is the one plan white has, followed by g6. Again, it should be a draw, but
Mhm.
still a little bit unpleasant if Fedoseev can get all of this in. So you can probably sit, but maybe at some point you should do something.
Yeah. I obviously we took a lot of liberties. We gave, better say if 20 moves or something like that there. For example, if the king goes to f5, there already might be like a bishop f2 resource at some point, right? Just kind of trying to possibly prevent that plan. But again, I just want to point out the safety margin, even that position that you pointed out where white just got absolutely everything and you still go g6, that position, although obviously white's pressing, is still objectively a draw. So I think it just goes to show how safe this all really is. And I think Hikaru will definitely play like bishop e1, as you pointing out, or bishop f2 at some point. So I don't even think that Vladimir can necessarily even get that configuration.
Right, so let's see what's going to happen here. I'm sure he's looking at the move king to g4. And yeah, the question is whether Hikaru is going to go bishop to e1, keeping an eye on the pawn in g3, making sure that we cannot go here. And in case you go rook a7, maybe something like, maybe here you can now get the move in f5. I think you
Mm.
definitely do
Mhm.
want to get in this move, though, because it makes it more difficult for white to make progress. But let's see what is going to happen. King g4 has been played by Fedoseev, and there we have it, bishop to e1. Hikaru's right up to the task.
Yeah, and if he ever goes back like rook d3 to try to defend that pawn, that is going to immediately allow Hikaru to move his own rook right away from f8 and activate it. And here I'm wondering just bishop f2 or bishop b4, of course, that's fine. Um, yeah, hard to yeah, again, one f5 of course um does give black a little bit more breathing room, but it does feel like, yeah, with this bishop e1 resource especially, you might not even need to get to anything like that.
All right, I see rook d7 by Fedoseev. So now he's passing Hikaru the move. Let's see what Hikaru is going to do. He goes bishop to f2. Seems completely fine. Um, yeah, and again, it's difficult to make progress because the moment you go king f5, you hang this pawn over here. Also, thanks Ref Prof Patrick for the tier 1 sub. I think I've seen that username on Twitch, but yeah, we see a lot of people moving over to kick as well. And yeah, Fedoseev is struggling here to come up with a good plan. Maybe you go king f3 and walk the king around this way. Let's have a look. Let's say you go king f3, bishop here, you go g4, and but I guess the moment you go king e4, black goes rook e8 and rook e7, and that is definitely the
Mhm.
defensive setup you want.
I was going to say there also may be, again, you could still use that bishop e1 idea, which would prevent h4, and then you no longer even have this h4 g5. I do think we will see this king f3 idea from Fedoseev. He does play it here because, again, as you mentioned, the king and f5, that's about as active as you can bring it there. But then it might not even be possible to get that configuration with the pawns going to h4 and then eventually g5. But saying that, as you pointed out, there's this great resource, rook e8, rook e7. So if as long, yeah, Hikaru just goes bishop e4, his bishop stays in tune with e7 and e1. So, I mean, I don't think you can zugzwang here whatsoever. Again, Vladimir's going to try a little more because there's just no risk. Obviously, Hikaru's pieces are just playing defense, but on one side of the board, it's so localized, you just can't really add the necessary pressure for there to be any mistakes from either side.
Yeah, and Hikaru, he's looking very, very relaxed. He's like, all right, when is this game gonna end in a draw? Fedoseev, understandably, is still pushing, but honestly, I don't think there is a way. And yeah, that is why he's thinking here. Again, like g4, I think there's always this idea. And he goes for g4 is on the board. I like the move that you pointed out, bishop e1, stopping h4 altogether. However, now white is probably able to get their king to f5. Maybe, like, let's say you sit here, right, with bishop e1. I guess there's just
Mhm.
nothing we can do in case we cannot get h4 in.
Yeah, and I was going to say Hikaru looks more than relaxed. He looks maybe even a little bit annoyed. He's like, this is going on for a long time. He's just I think he rolled his eyes maybe a little bit. So obviously he knows that it's a draw. Can't really blame White for trying, but yeah, certainly yeah, I don't think he has any concerns about any of these plans. And yeah, as you mentioned, by the way, even here, right, a move like bishop c5, I'm wondering, because that way you can meet king e4 with your idea of rook to e8. So there's more than one way to defend here. It's not like he needs to play ultra precise moves for there to be anything, for there to be a draw, is what I mean to say.
Right. Probably pretty much any bishop move is fine here. I mean, bishop c3, a3, or c5. And yeah, Hikaru is looking a little bit maybe impatient, rather, hoping that that Fedoseev will offer a draw here soon. But I mean, if Hikaru would be playing with white pieces here, of course he would be pushing as well, trying to squeeze the most out of every single little chance he has. And I'm sure that right now he is considering the move bishop e1. He's wondering like, okay, should I really stop white from? And there we have it on the board.
That looks very safe, right? I got the king on f5. It might look scary, but that's as far as it gets. And Fedoseev is going to go for it. That's the maximum improvement of his position. But yeah, it looks like the bishop is just going to, you have plenty of squares on the diagonal. And the bishop on h5 for white. Oh, I was going to say you can't move, but funnily enough, it can. You can play bishop g6, although that's about it.
You can't move from there, yeah.
Yeah, it can't move there back. The rook on the 7th rank, the moment you leave, that allows black's rook to potentially activate. So you don't want to do that. You know what way white could lose? That's obviously impossible. If white goes like rook d4, rook e4, you actually get your king in a bit of a mating net. So again, I don't think we're going to see that happen. But just if we want to, mess around a little bit while the players are playing this out, you could actually, yeah, exactly. Thank you for showing that on the board. That might be how my game goes here, but certainly not these two esteemed gentlemen. And I would imagine we are going to get a draw very soon because Fedoseev has completely exhausted the resources of his positions.
Let's see. So is there maybe a more realistic way we can find that white could ever lose? Yeah, I like this setup with bishop h4 for Hikaru. Like, it looks really weird putting your bishop there. It's completely stuck. But this bishop on h5 is also stuck. And it stops white from ever playing h4. And there's just no plan ever to make progress here. So I guess this game is very soon going to end in a draw. Now Fedoseev is just shuffling back and forth with rook b7 to a7. And yeah, I think there's just no plan at all here.
Yep. Not much to add to your astute commentary there. Yeah, I'm looking at Hikaru. He is he's waiting for game 3, it seems like. And now we have rook e8, king e5, king f5, excuse me. He's just going to go back to f8. I wonder if he pre-moves rook f8 here.
Yeah, I was about to say the same. I wonder if he pre-moved it, yeah. Maybe he did.
Yeah, we'll see. That's the extent of the excitement, I think, for this position. I think he might have, because he's taken a sip of water. His hands are not on the mouse.
He played it very, very quickly. I would not be surprised if he did.
What do you think about this king d5 move? Where's he going with that king? What is even the possible idea there?
Maybe you walk the king here, but then there's no plan.
Yeah.
Bishop g3, good move hitting the pawn, and now he just goes back. Yeah, this game, is bishop h4 even a 3-fold, I wonder? We had something similar.
Yeah, I mean, the rook is jumping around on different squares, so maybe not. But we must be getting close. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, king f3, king g8.
King g8.
And I think this one is about to finish. Like, there's really no plan. They're shuffling back and forth.
Okay. Oh, I thought that was a 3-fold, actually. But king e3. So Fedoseev is actually... Yeah.
Like rook f8 instantly. No, I'm sure he's pre-moved it. Like, he's that confident. Now he's gonna give a check and pre-move this. Oh,
bishop g3. There's got to be a 3-fold here with king e4. I feel like we've seen.
It would be. Fedoseev is still pushing. It would be hilarious if after rook e8, Fedoseev plays rook e7 and Hikaru has rook f8 pre-moved.
But there would be no benefit of rook e7 as well, right? It's not like Hikaru is pre-moved. He can't benefit from Hikaru's pre-move there. And that would be good content, I guess, but nothing more than that. Yeah.
All right, so king c6.
I'll be honest, I am surprised that Fedoseev is still playing this out, with this f5 idea or whatever. I don't know. I guess I would have taken the draw by now, but because there's no ideas right now, he doesn't even have that idea of pushing to g5. His pawns are completely fixed. So this is I mean, maybe he's like trying to tempt Hikaru to like go rook c3 for like the win, and then somehow he's thinking he goes like, I don't know, king e8 or something like that. Maybe that's like his like last strategy. But okay, yeah, this okay. So
Well, he's got
he's
a pawn,
even
but
won a pawn.
Hikaru now is going to pre-move bishop g5 and bishop h4. But yeah, this game is clearly gonna end in a draw, and there we have it. The second game is in the books as well. So the score is 1-1, 2 draws. Tough game for Hikaru. He got a bad position out of the opening, but he managed to survive. And even though Fedoseev was pushing, he was never in any real danger. And now he will have the white piece again. So this is a very, very important save to stay in the match.
Yeah, for sure. It did seem like early on Fedoseev had the positional advantage, but this trade on f6, I mean, he removed all the risk for himself, but he also removed the lion's share of his winning chances. So that was, I think, the big moment when he decided to make that trade. I think both of us, 98% certainty already had the draw in mind. So yeah, I don't think Hikaru is going to be upset at all with this draw. He might be a little annoyed by the 75 move game, but obviously the result is completely fine. As you said, he has the black pieces, and now we'll see what his strategy is going to be with. It is his last white. It is a best out of 4, so perhaps he will. We'll see if he wants to push a little more, or he'll stick with his slow, King's Indian-esque setups, just kind of keeping the majority of the play, going, for like a long game, basically.
Yeah, for sure. He did say that he took the last couple of days off on the weekend to study for this match. So I'm sure he has something prepared. I wonder if he's going to go for the same setup against the Caro-Kann with knight f3 and d3. But yeah, for sure, this is a big save. He had a bad position at the opening. But yeah, like you said, the whole plan of going bishop g5 and bishop takes f6 took all the risk out of the position. But, if there's low risk, there is also low reward. And that's what we see here. Fedoseev does not win this game, even though he did have a great position. So I wonder if anyone knows when the next game is going to start. I guess it's going to be, there might be a little bit of a break. So let's see if we have any of the other games that are still in progress. Wesley So comes back with the black pieces, scores a very important win. So that match is all tied up right now.
And another equalizing win was by Magnus, who strikes back immediately with the black pieces. So just like Wesley, they both lost with white, and then they just both win with black. So every match right now I'm looking is 1-1 actually, across the board in the Division 1.
Right, so let's see. So yeah, Magnus comes back, Wesley So comes back, and the second game between Laquang and Fabiano, this looks pretty solid, ended in a draw, I guess. I mean, looking at the final position, it seemed like a game where nothing ever really happened. Laquang did get a nice advantage, I feel, out of the opening. He has the bishop pair and the better pawn structure because black is an isolated pawn on d5 and the pawns on b6 and b7. But Fabiano went for this typical idea of going h5, creating counterplay on the king side with either knight g4 or pawn h4. Went for knight g4. Now they get the opposite color bishops. White wins a pawn here. But the light squares around white's king are always so weak that it's going to be very difficult to really do anything. And this pawn on a4 is also weak. So I guess black is pretty comfortably holding here. And that's...
Feels like this happens a lot in this Dubov Tarish, right, is what they call it. These Tarish positions, white will often win a pawn, but black will get a bishop pair or opposite color bishops or dynamic play. By the way, I was also... scrolling through a little bit because we actually have so many matches going on, right? This is just, we're focusing on Division 1, of course. I was going into the weeds of Division 2, Division 3, because there actually are some really strong players there. And one match that very briefly caught my eye, I didn't look at any of the games, but Vladimir Kramnik was actually had a very back and forth match against Yu Yangyi. Vladimir Kramnik, of course, the former world champion, also frequent Title Tuesday player recently, which is pretty interesting to see. And he had like 3 decisive games against Yu Yangyi. I just thought that was pretty cool. I mean, this guy's retired, but he's still, hanging on with some of the best, players in the world. Thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And actually, I also recently had the honor of playing him in a Title Tuesday. I'm wondering if I can pull it up somewhere. Here, division. I can change it. So let's have a quick look at everything that is happening. I know it's a little bit scuffed, but Maxim Vachier-Lagrave won his match against Alexei Dreyev. Pretty convincingly, he won 2.5 to half. Then we have Chigayev and Oparin. Oparin has won his match. Oparin was also playing in the Final Four. He scored a pretty impressive 2.5 out of 3 on the first board. So Oparin wins his match. Kramnik wins... Oh, no. Kramnik has won his match. 2.5 to 1.5 against Yu Young Yi.
Very back and forth.
Exactly. Prag very convincingly beats Ming with 3-0. Most of you might know him as a Wonderful Time. Then we have Keimer versus Meyer, which has been won by... Oh, no, wait, they're going to an Armageddon. So the German prodigy Vincent Keimer against Georg Meyer, who used to play for Germany, but now has switched federations to Uruguay. They're playing an Armageddon game here. Then we have the matchup between Raunak and Arjun, which has been won by Arjun, 2.5, 1.5. So many interesting matches. Oh, we see Giri against Abdeslam.
I was going to tell you, your countryman has gone down again, right? Because he was knocked out by Norderbeck in the World Cups in the rapid portion as well. So this is maybe a difficult opponent for him.
It definitely is. I think also he got knocked out by Norderbeck in the final matchup in the qualifier to the Fischer Random World Championship. So Norderbeck is again proving to be a super tough opponent. I mean, not only for Anish, but for everyone at this point, right? He's in the top 20 or something, extremely strong player. So I think Anish just got a little bit unlucky because we see some of the other guys, they're playing like 2500s, 2600s, but he's playing a fellow top player. And I think Norderbeck is also someone who is only stronger in rapid chess. Then we see here the matchup between Denis Lazovic and Dubov. Wait, what? Why would Dubov just make quick draws with white? Like we see here 1 and 2 Berlin draws.
That is bizarre.
And he goes on to lose the Armageddon. I mean, you're kind of
not a good match
for it
strategy.
you just give away white if you just give away draws with the white pieces. But those are really all the matchups in Division 2. I was hoping we could take a quick break, but we kind of just ruined it for ourselves by going over the games, because here we are already off with game number 3 between Hikaru and Fedoseev. And we have this, you would think this has come from a French, but it actually came from the Caro-Kann.
Because Caro-Kann line. Yeah.
Because Fedoseev lost the tempo by going c6 to c5, but Hikaru lost the tempo. Wait, where exactly? Oh, wait, Hikaru's won a tempo.
So they're going for King's Indian attack, which is a King's Indian defense with an extra tempo. And now he's up 2 tempi on it, right? So if this doesn't go well, what does that tell you about the King's Indian from the Black's point of view?
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, I feel like Hikaru definitely feels pretty comfortable in these types of positions. He would normally play these if Black is up a tempo. So I think normally Black already has their pawn on b5. Now Fedoseev goes for the move a5. I guess he wants to go for a4 and possibly a3. So generally what White does here is they go knight f1, and after a4 they stop that by playing the move a3 themselves. And then Black is going to go b5, b4. And I think objectively Black is fine here, but this always feels easier to play with White, because what White is going to do here is White is going to play the move h5. And he's going to ask Black, like, okay, are you going to allow me to play the move h6? Now, if you do, the dark squares around Black's king are always going to be weak, and White's going to go knight h2 here, knight to g4, and what you want to do here is play something like bishop to g5, trade of the bishops, so that then you can infiltrate, let's say, with your queen, and this is super tough. So generally what Black does is Black stops the move h6 with the move h6 themselves, but here White again can move their knight to g4, and eventually start thinking about any sort of sacrifices. And another idea is go king h1, rook g1, go g4, move the bishop out of the way, and go g5. And Sergei Karyakin, he won a crushing game here with white pieces against Sam Shankland when he was in a must-win situation in the 2021 World Cup.
Yes, indeed. I was going to say Hikaru has played these many times, but you know, it's funny. If I saw a random game happening in this variation, I would think Black has just made an elementary mistake, right? You're going to this line, you're down a tempo. As you showed, White has these very dangerous ideas with h4, h5. I know exactly the game you're talking about, where in the World Cup, Shankly won the first game in the Catalan, Neo Catalan, and then the next game Karyakin won as well. But Fedoseev, he's playing this very quickly. This is already the second game he has played E6. So clearly this is something that he, I don't know if he anticipated for this match, but it's clearly something he has looked at. So it's interesting to see that I guess he just feels A, comfortable in these positions, and B, he probably has done a bit of analysis and decided, what, this is, still very playable, even though I'm losing this tempo. And here we also see him play a very quick F6, which I think normally that's not really, as you pointed out, Black's strategy is to go for this A4, B5. White goes full steam ahead on the king side. You were pointing out Black should play H6. I also know a lot of times you put the bishop on F8. That's going to make it harder for some of these sacrifices to occur there. But Fedoseev, completely different approach, a very quick F6. And now this looks very much like a slightly strange, like French defense, right? With this E6, D5 pawn structure. And Hikaru himself is playing C4. I actually quite like that move, just kind of putting pressure on that chain. My dream, of course, is rerouting that knight from F1 to G4, a bishop and F4, just kind of completely clamping down on E5. So again, it's funny. This is the third game in a row where one side kind of has a slight structural disadvantage, but seems like wants to compensate or is going to need to compensate for it through some kind of alternative ways, usually dynamic piece play.
Yeah, and we see the move H6 by Fedoseev. And yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by the move F6. I think it makes the position a little less cagey because in this position, given the fact that it's closed, White is generally going to attack on the king side because he has a space advantage there due to the pawn on E5, and Black is going to storm on the queen side. So this generally becomes very double-edged. The move F6 makes the position again a little bit more clear-cut, but here the pawn on E6 is always weak. White has nice control over the E5 square, and also I feel like the move A5 is a little bit out of place here, because now also the B5 square is weakened. H6, it does take knight G5 out of the equation, but what if White goes for the plan here that you mentioned earlier? Let's say something like bishop F4, maybe followed by knight E5, and I definitely like the pressure that Hikaru has on Fedoseev's center. You never want to play the move D4, because if you do that, you severely weaken the D4 square, which White can try to occupy with moves like knight E1 to E4, and also, again, there's still the move knight E5. So I like the position Hikaru's gotten out of the opening. However, he is down 2 minutes on the clock. So what is he thinking about here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. This bishop F4 does seem natural. I wonder, so I guess Fedoseev playing H6 just doesn't want there to be any knight G5 sallies to attack his pawn at E6. But I'm not really worried about Hikaru's time here. I think he's just kind of adjusting slightly to the position. Maybe he expected this kind of slower game, like you said, a little cagey, both sides kind of going on each other on queen side and king side. Now he's kind of adjusting, okay, how do I play this position? Yeah, of course, D4, you never want to play that opening of the bishop on G2. And he goes knight H2. So he probably wants to cover the G4 square. And also, as I mentioned earlier, maybe trying to play knight G4 at some point. But to me, it did seem like this bishop F4, perhaps he didn't want to allow bishop F4, knight G4, maybe even some, exchange stacks in F4. So I guess he was just trying to work out that move order. And real quick, I saw something in the chat that I want to point out. I did see Hikaru got up from the board for about 5 seconds, which prompted a lot of inquiries. So obviously he's I don't know why he got up. Obviously he's allowed to do that, but just so you guys know, I kind of even see it in the background of his camera. When these guys play these matches, they actually have not only the front-facing camera, they actually have a camera behind them. I'm sure you're familiar with this as well, Benjamin. You had to do this for your matches as well. So whoever's watching these guys, we don't see everything, but whoever's proctoring these cameras, they can see their whole room, them walking around. So it's all very, very professional in that regard.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised because generally you're not allowed to get off from your chair, or maybe you're not allowed to get off. Maybe you're not allowed to get out of the room, right? Because then you can pretty much do whatever you want. Maybe you have a phone there or a friend in another room. But I guess if you're still in the same room, it's fine. Maybe he had to adjust the lights or something. Maybe the sun is shining bright in Florida and that was distracting him a little bit. But yeah, if you look very closely on his stand there, you see his phone there, which is right above. I guess that's a pawn, the Chessable pawn, and Snoopy, right?
Yeah, I'm zooming in with my eyes. Yeah, I mean, I think it's completely fine if you're not out of camera view, as far as I understand. And but anyway, yeah, that is a good observation. Snoopy and the chess pawn and the phone.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and someone asked in the chat that he felt like Hikaru seemed a little bit seemed a little bit upset or frustrated. I don't know. To me, that doesn't really seem. Well, he always shakes his head, even when he has a
Hmm.
winning position.
Hmm.
Honestly, though, here I do not like the move knight h2 precisely because of what Fedoseev just did, taking on c4, taking on d1, and playing e5. Now e4 is coming, maybe a potential knight at g4, bishop e6 as well, and I think you'd rather have your knight still in f1, so you can go knight e3 and fight for those central squares. So to me, the move knight 1 to h2 definitely seemed off, and I think he had to go for this move bishop to f4, which is kind of what we discussed to control the e5 square.
Yeah, I wonder if he I mean, he must have underestimated or missed this idea because a move like d takes c4, at least to me, is a little bit anti-positional, right? You're trading your pawn in d5, your central pawn. You're leaving yourself with this weak e pawn, but this follow up with e5, that was just that was the whole point, right? I think if you don't play that move and you allow Hikaru one more tempo to play bishop f4, then you're going to be stuck with that major weakness. But now Fedoseev's able to, he does have this isolated e5 pawn, but it's kind of a strength, right? It gives you more control over d4. Now the bishop on c8 is able to potentially come out. Bishop e6 here looks like the simplest move, followed by, perhaps even rook d8. So perhaps Hikaru just kind of had a little bit of a blind spot, excuse me, for d takes c4, because at first sight that is just an anti-positional move. At least that is how I personally would have been thinking about this position.
And we have the move bishop to f5 by Fedoseev, also looks pretty active. But yeah, I wonder in case he had played bishop e6 how Hikaru was going to deal with this pawn. Maybe just pawn at b3. And the interesting thing is black has this isolated pawn on e5, right? But he also has very firm control over the d4 square. He can potentially put his knight there. And you can take, but that will always give black a protected passer. So I like Fedoseev's position here. His pieces definitely look more active. And again, this knight at h2, to me, it looks off. I think if Hikaru can magically put this knight on c3, that would solve all of his problems. But the knight is not really going anywhere. If you go knight f1, it's still stuck. So that is really Hikaru's main problem here. So let's see how he's trying to fix that. And he goes knight d2. Maybe he wants to bring this knight back to f3.
Yeah, I was going to point out that was a beautiful idea from the computer suggestion, right? I think that I just saw the move h5 popped up, just and the pawn on h5 would have been immune because of the g4 pawn fork. And the point of h5 is that you're creating the h4 square for your knight. So a very creative way to kind of solve that issue. The knight coming to h4, opening the bishop on g2, and the knight h2 is now able to potentially come to f3. The knight from h4 can jump to g6. So I was a bit confused when the computer said, hey, bishop f5, that's not a good move. Looks like a nice active diagonal. Turns out that there's this tactical sequence. Not an easy move to spot. So not completely surprising both players missed it, but nevertheless, a very, very cute idea from the engine there.
And we see Hikaru after move a4 going knight to b1. It's kind of funny. We were talking earlier. If he can transfer this knight to c3, that would have solved all of his problems. But he's going to transfer the f3 knight to the c3 square. And I like the idea. The knight on c3 is putting pressure on the pawn on a4. It can also potentially jump to d5 or to b5. And this knight can still later come back to f3. But he's keeping this knight on h2 for the moment to make sure that black never has this knight g4 jump. And time is evening up a little bit. I still think Fedoseev has the advantage, but I really like the plan that Hikaru has just come up with. And this definitely gives him much better chances to hold here, or maybe even take over the advantage at some point.
Yeah, if he's able to get knight c3, knight d5, we mentioned this other knight from h2 entering the game, he's going to really start dominating these light squares. Saying that is going to take 2-3 tempi. So I'm wondering if Fedoseev can play something like knight d4. Obviously, the pawn on b7 not really an issue. You always have rook b8, rook b2. The knight on d4 is very strong. White can't really ever take it because then you're straightening out my pawns, giving me these central passers. And he's thinking about it. I wonder what other moves he might be considering. Yeah, he just goes for knight d4. That did seem like a very, very natural move. And I expect Hikaru to very quickly play knight c3, trying to mirror Fedoseev's plan.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's way too greedy to take this pawn on b7. Black just goes rook a8, attacking your bishop. Yeah. And they can, first of all, just take this pawn, but also they can trap your rook, and you will lose in exchange. So knight c3, absolutely correct. Black can take the bishop pair here with the move knight to c2, but I don't think you're too concerned because you trade off black's active knight on d4. Now your bishop is active. Your knight can jump to d5, so I don't think we have to be too concerned about this. And also look at the clock. Hikaru was earlier down like 1 or 2 minutes, but now he's up almost a minute on the clock. So things are definitely moving in the right direction. But overall, I feel like it's been a tough match. In the first game, maybe he got a slight advantage, but Fedoseev quickly equalized, and the game was very up and down. In the second game, he was much worse with the black pieces. And also this game, he definitely does not have an advantage. And if anything, he's a bit worse here.
Yeah, for sure. We did see game one, very back and forth. Game two did look a little spooky for a moment, but again, very quickly, Hikaru was able to defend. So we have kind of seen, these games, even though they have ended in draws, aren't, I mean, definitely not like the Dubov games that we briefly saw that were ending in 10 moves. And excuse me, now I'm going to actually get up real quick, like Hikaru. Someone's at my door.
Oh, that happens. No worries. I'll take over. So yeah, knight c3 has been played. We see rook fb8 by Fedoseev defending the pawn. However, it does look a little bit passive. And I wonder what Fedoseev is going to do in case Hikaru goes for something like rook ac1. Now knight c2 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I feel like slowly but surely Hikaru is crawling out of this. Yeah, Alex, just to update you, the move rook fb8 has just been played. To me, it looks way too passive. Moving the rook.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all, because I was going to say maybe he wants to push b5, but then why not? Oh, I see. You want to use the other rook because
you hang the rook.
Yeah, but I was going to say if he plays rook ab8, then a4 was hanging, so his idea must be rook a7 or something like that, right? If he's very slowly trying to play b5. That looks very creative, but I don't know, maybe too creative, right? As they like to say, they're just boxing your rooks in on this, but that must be his plan, right? There's no other explanation, I think, for this move rook fb8. And yeah, I mean, it does have logic though, right? Because if he removes this pawn on c4, he's able to kind of remove the control of d5. And hypothetically, right, if he's able to make that push work at some point, then he's going to get pressure in the b2 pawn. Saying that, if Hikaru just keeps this knight on c3, right, I don't know, like rook c1 maybe, right, so that there's no knight c2 with tempo, what is, is Fedoseev going to move his rook from a8, right? Like, what's he going to do?
To me, it seems very unrealistic, because even let's say you go rook a7, right, and we play, I don't know, knight f1, even if you go b5, I can still take on d. I mean, maybe here you get pretty good compensation. But let's say I just take. I mean, it feels like you just create a bunch of weaknesses for yourself. So I'm really surprised by the move rook fb8. And to be fair, I'm a little bit surprised that Hikaru is taking so long here. Maybe he's considering another move besides rook to c1. And he goes for knight f3. Wait, after bishop g4, do you think he's considering the exchange sacrifice? Oh, this
that looks
all of a sudden
really interesting, right? With this bishop on g2 is now completely unopposed. The knight on e5 is powerful. Knight on d4 is getting undermined. This would give Hikaru some very, very powerful compensation. Yeah, again, earlier, when I was talking about b5, I'm just trying to justify this rook f8 move, right? Because I don't see any other reason. I almost expect Fedoseev to go like rook d8, like, on one of the next moves, just because he wants to correct that mistake. And this is a beautiful, beautiful exchange sacrifice here that I really like this position for white. I mean, you're barely down any material, right? Just bishop and pawn for the rook and the bishop pair. I mean, it's not even compensation. It's an advantage most likely, right? Especially with I have knight d5 coming. Very, very natural moves here. So yeah, do not expect bishop g4 to be played from Fedoseev. I think
we have knight g4 by Fedoseev, putting pressure on the bishop and defending this pawn on e5. Now knight at d2 by Hikaru, just clearly playing on these light squares in the center. So I'm starting to like how he's playing this game. However, I wonder what happens in case Fedoseev takes, goes knight c2, attacking the rook. Oh, you have knight d5. Oh, and look at this. If you take here, you take one bishop, and then you take the other bishop. That's a nice resource there. And if you go knight c2, I think just the same idea, because otherwise you would end up losing the pawn on e3. So great find by Hikaru, and I think he's starting to turn this one around because he's getting great control over the d5 and e4 squares.
Yeah, if he's able to put the knight on e4, okay, we do have rook a6, but yeah, knight d4 is extremely natural. He has the other knight possibly coming to d5, and yeah, at least optically speaking, Black has the strong knight at d4, but white's going to have two strong knights, right? So, and the bishop on e7 does feel a little bit like a defensive piece, right? Like in the long run, obviously Fedoseev is going to do his best not to allow that. But if you are just stuck with that dark square bishop against one of my knights, you're going to be probably just technically lost in the end game. So yeah, I mean, Hikaru, his pieces, he's been really, really resourceful. First with this knight d2, knight b1, knight c3 idea. And it felt like, Fedoseev was better, but he really lost steam with these mysterious rook moves. And yeah, it's going to be perhaps Hikaru now who's he's up on the clock as well. He obviously feels the momentum shifting in his way. He might be starting to look for his chances here once more.
Yeah, we see knight d5 by Hikaru, attacking the bishop on e7, so Fedoseev moves the bishop back to d8. But what about the move knight e4 now? It looks pretty awkward to defend that pawn on c5. You have some knight jumps, but I don't think they ever lead to anything. So I really like how this is going for Hikaru, and knight e4 is on the board. Maybe you play b6, but then maybe you can even jump in with knight at d6. But yeah, it's really these rook moves that completely have like Fedoseev definitely started drifting with these moves. Like the rooks, he's made a bunch of moves with them, but they just look passive to me. And if anything, they've made his position worse. So yeah, right now it looks a little bit awkward to defend this pawn on c5. Maybe you move the rook over to c8, but it definitely feels like Hikaru is getting the upper hand here.
Yeah, and what do we think it seems like Hikaru has maximized the position of these knights, right? Just kind of on the central outpost. Is there any way he could try to improve his position here? Let's say rook c8, as you mentioned. Is it just kind of like a mutual, standstill, or is there a way to open things up somehow?
It's a good question. I guess if you look at the position, the knights are really ideally placed. You can't really improve the bishops that much. So maybe you start improving the rooks a little bit. And maybe the way to do that is with the move rook d2 and rook to e1, keeping this rook on the d file. And then you get a little bit of pressure on the e5 pawn. That being said, the position still looks very cagey to me. They still have to do some slow maneuvering. And there's no easy way to break through right away. And as we speak, rook c8 has been played, and Hikaru responded with the move bishop to d2. But I don't know, like, does he want to go to c3 to put pressure on the knight? I guess that's his idea, right?
Maybe he just wants to step out of the way. Not that it was a threat, but these knight e3, knight c2 ideas, although with the knight on d5, I don't see why he would be necessarily worried about that. Is there any difference having the bishop on c3 than e3? Maybe he wants to play f3 at some moment. Do you think that could be part of his plan? And then the bishop on e3 would not be a target?
That's a good point. It's, by the way, interesting. After bishop d2, the computer says black's best way forward is to give a check on e2, and once we move the king over, go knight to d4. It looks very odd, but the idea is that black now wants to go knight h2 and knight f3, which would win a piece, because all of a sudden you block the bishop's defense of the knight on e4, and there doesn't seem to be anything good that white can do about it. But it's, of course, very weird for a human to give a check and go back, just lose 2 tempi. Instead, Fedoseev played king to h7, and Hikaru played knight ec3. I'm a little bit surprised. Why wouldn't you follow up with the move bishop to c3, right? That would be the idea, I would think. But knight ec3 has been played, and Fedoseev is thinking. And again, in the meantime, Hikaru, he's building up an advantage on the clock.
And rook back to b8. I think there was a very strong positional idea here for Vladimir, right? If he played bishop a5, then that bishop that I was saying, oh, that bishop's so bad, you don't want to, be stuck with it. Perhaps this was an opportunity to trade it off, right? Because that bishop, it's not even, sometimes they say, bad bishops defend strong pawns or something along those lines. That bishop in d8 was doing literally nothing. I guess it was preventing knight e7. That's also, I'm a little surprised because Vladimir has gone king h7. So obviously he's very mindful of those forks. So it looked like perhaps maybe he could follow with bishop a5. But he very quickly played rook to b8, another rook move in the game. But perhaps he's just saving this bishop a5 for later.
Right, I guess the one thing he was concerned about is that in case you go bishop a5, there is knight e7 hitting the rook and the bishop on f5. And in case you move over, then white can take, follow up with bishop d4. So a little bit tricky. So I guess that's why he played rook b8. Now Hikaru goes bishop b4. And I like the move that Fedoseev plays. He plays the move g6. He doesn't want to trade himself, because that gives white firm control over the e4 square. But now he goes g6. He says, like, okay, you can trade, but we trade under my terms, because in this case, Black still has good control over the e4 square. And here Fedoseev is all of a sudden up a minute on the clock. And it's still such a cagey position. Like, I feel like white's better. Their pieces are slightly better placed, but what is the plan here? It seems very difficult to really break through.
Yeah. I mean, Hikaru, he's had this knight in e4, now he puts the bishop in e4. So it feels like he's, to me at least, he's kind of poking around, right? Just seeing like, okay, let me try this setup. Let me try this setup. And perhaps that will also get Fedoseev to make some changes to the position that Hikaru can further try to exploit. Because even for black, we talked about, okay, maybe there was some kind of bishop a5 or b5 ideas. But, if he just plays, I don't know, I'm rook c8 or something, or I don't know, just some neutral move, how is Hikaru going to I mean, what you said, yeah, how's he going to break through? Like you said, maybe earlier you were talking about some rook d2, rook d1, just mild improvement of the position, maybe find some way to move these rooks around. Like, I don't know if rook h1 is maybe an idea, trying to play some kind of h5 move. So perhaps Hikaru is just kind of sitting a little bit here, looking for Fedoseev to give him an avenue to improve the position.
Right, and as we were speaking, we saw the head bob there from Hikaru, so that is definitely good news. I feel like he's getting more and more control over this game. I also like that you mentioned with rook h1 and h5. Maybe you can even consider h5 right away, although black perhaps just takes and now has to move h4, so might not be that effective. But I feel like we were talking about, hey, how can Hikaru improve his position? But what is Fedoseev going to do here? Probably Hikaru has ways with like rook e1, maybe piling up the pressure a little bit on the pawn on e5. But I don't really see an effective plan for Fedoseev. And that's why he's thinking. He's like, hey, what is my plan here? I don't see a plan, but at some point you have to move. And he goes for a move bishop a5. Very direct, but with the move bishop a5, the pawn on a4 can also start hanging. So does Hikaru have a way to take advantage? Maybe something like f3, so that in case the knight moves back, now you can take here and take the pawn on a4. Let's see whether he is going to go for that.
Interesting. So now there are some possibilities with that bishop being loose. I was also going to say, you don't really want to take on c3 if you're black here because of the surprising capture b takes c3, right? You double your pawns, but you kick out. Well, here, of course, also you'd be attacking all these knights. But in general, right, you're just completely kicking out that knight. The double pawns are really no worry. And all of a sudden you have rook b1 and you can put a lot of pressure on the b file. So I think the bishop on a5, it's not really taking c3, but potentially you do want to trade for the dark square bishops. Saying exactly. That, looks like we do have some moves. He does actually do it. He does actually take c3. Yeah, I'm very surprised by that.
F3 on the board by Hikaru. And yeah, I feel like the move knight f6 is pretty easy. You just take here, take the pawn on a4. White wins a pawn, and black does not have enough compensation. So Fedoseev goes down this line with bishop takes c3. And Hikaru looked at his computer. He's like, wait, what? But let's have a look. He takes with the pawn. And here, Fedoseev seems to be in trouble. This knight is under attack, and this knight is under attack. There is one way to deal with that, which is with the move bishop takes e4. Now, if you take this bishop, this knight is no longer hanging, and black can move this knight, and the problem is solved. However, we take this knight on d4. We have a fork here. Black's only move is the move bishop takes d5. Now we recapture, and this knight is still under attack, and there's still some pawns hanging. So this still looks good for Hikaru. Probably you have to play knight f6. We take, I guess, either pawn. Let's say you take here. And now the nice discovery, bishop takes h6. And I feel like Hikaru should have pretty good chances in this endgame to win.
But Benjamin, surprisingly, that's not on the board. I think Hikaru just missed this.
What?
I think he missed this knight c2.
What? But even without knight c2, there's also knight c6. He completely threw this. Or did he? I mean, wait, but now you're just losing the pawn on c4. Wait, what has happened?
Yeah, I mean, the line you showed was very convincing. I was, you grabbed that pawn, but that's a good point, right? Knight c2, I'm sure he missed that move because that's a beautiful idea. And then going to a3, and now all of a sudden c4 is unprotected. I think he thought, he has to go back to c6 or e6. Then I can play like rook b1, rook f1, adding some pressure. Maybe he just kind of very quickly made that decision without calculating c takes d4 that you had on the board. But this looks like somehow the knight on a3 is extremely powerful. It prevents rook b1, it attacks c4. Now e4 is not easy to defend. I mean, something like king f3 looks like at the very least rook f8 looks really strong there. So all of a sudden, the tables have turned once again in this game.
Yeah, this looks like a tough position for Hikaru. I honestly don't see a good way of defending the pawn on e4. And like you said, the knight on a3 is super annoying. It's really difficult to get rid of it. So I'm really surprised with what happened there. I wonder if he forgot that after pawn takes c4, he's no longer attacking the knight. I honestly don't know. I'm really surprised. To me, c takes d4 looked very convincing and very straightforward. So, and this looks just bad. And he's fighting for a draw. Here goes bishop e1. You don't quite want to take because you allow rook to d7. So rook f8 first, rook d2, and he goes rook f7, guarding the 7 rank. And now I'm sure he's looking at this move. And again, you don't want to play king f3 because you're going to walk into a nasty discovery with knight to d5.
Yeah, knight d5 and knight c4. The knights somehow from opposite sides of the board are teaming up for a decisive fork. Yeah, I mean, it's a interesting moment to say, to say the least. Maybe Hikaru just made that decision very quickly. But now, yeah, as you said, he has to fight with this worse structure. Although, the game is not over because that knight on a3, as long as the knight stays on e3, it is, they kind of balance each other. You can't really trap that knight. I mean, attacking it is super difficult. Like some kind of bishop d2, bishop c1 has to be set up. But I can imagine like right here, if Hikaru goes like rook d1 and then knight e4, again, he can try that idea of rook d7, and he will have a lot of counterplay. And the knight on a3 is completely useless in defending the king side. So it does seem like this is not, like a straightforward position for black. Fedoseev will need to find a way to corral this pawn without giving Hikaru that counterplay. And I'm really surprised by this rook e2 move instead of rook d1.
I don't like this move because I thought like, okay, he just has to sit on the d file. He can afford to lose the e pawn. It's not the end of the world because in case black takes here, there's no good way to enter. And even if you take right away, there's rook d7 and white seems to have enough counterplay. This knight on a3 is annoying, but it cannot move out easily, right? So I think it's really important that we keep this knight on e3 and we can potentially give up this pawn with the move rook e2. You're also giving up the d file, and now black really holds all the trumps. He goes for pawn g4, but Fedoseev keeps improving his position with rook to d3. Perhaps there's bishop g3 here, but look at this line. This line looks super scary to me. You take an e4, we take an e5, and rook e7. The bishop is under attack. If you move here, black takes here, and it feels like something is going to drop. Maybe not, but it feels super loose for white.
Yeah, and look at this time as well, right? Hikaru is down a minute on the clock here. I like this this invasion on d3 from Fedoseev. The other problem, right, is that white is just so tied down to this e4, c4, now c3 pawn. Although with this last move, bishop g3, Hikaru is trying to at least get some kind of play here. Knight e4, bishop e5. At least that bishop will be outside of the first 3 ranks, and you protect c3 as well. But somehow it feels, I don't see an immediate way that it loses, but somehow it feels like with this extremely active rook d3, knight e4 combo, white's position is really hanging by a thread. Saying that, I don't see a concrete winning forced move or something like that. So perhaps if Hikaru gets a tempo here, he will be okay. I'm even wondering about an idea like h5, trying to just carve out some squares for my pieces if I'm playing white, yes, so that I can get my knight to f5. So Fedoseev probably does need to act relatively quickly.
Exactly, and we are getting that line on the board here with rook e7, bishop f4. Now knight takes c3 to me looks very tempting. You're attacking the rook on e2 and increasing the pressure on the knight on e3. I don't know if you have to go rook e1, but if you go rook e1, hey, you also hang this pawn on a2, and all of a sudden every single pawn is dropping, and your pieces have not really come out yet. Maybe you have to go rook f2 and hope that in case black takes, this is not too bad for black because you give a check and you get a lot of counterplay. I don't know, but it looks tough. But as we speak, Fedoseev is now also dropping below a minute and everything can happen. I feel like he should just go knight takes c3. Just take that pawn, keep some time on the clock, and then think after rook to f2. Because now, oh, he goes knight f6. Big mistake. Wait, why did he not take the pawn?
I think that line you showed kind of probably encapsulated some of his worries, because if you go knight c3, knight a2, all of a sudden, if white's able to bring those rooks, like you said, to that set, maybe he was calculating that line, right? Where you take an e3 and then rook f7 and rook f1. With time running low, maybe you saw a ghost. I mean, that's my explanation there, because it did seem like you just grab that pawn, the a pawn is a total monster. But perhaps, again, just like the previous game, Fedoseev, he's trying to play a little bit too safe, right? He's like, okay, I take c3, I grab that pawn, but then my king side, is a little bit, devoid of defenders. So maybe he's just trying to kind of have everything, right? He goes back to f6. He wants to avoid any danger, but at the same time, he's also not, playing the most ambitious way. And now these guys
Oh,
are
and he
down
blundered.
to,
What is this?
oh,
King
knight
G7,
f5.
knight f5? Wait, knight
Oh my
what?
god. Oh,
Wait, and Hikaru, what?
And king h6,
Wait,
g5 is the
take?
idea?
No, but you just move your king to h7 and then you hang
the knight's
the
hanging.
knight. Wait, what is this?
No.
What?
And I'm looking at Hikaru. He is grimacing the seat. What was his idea? What
No,
did
he's
he miss
shaking
here?
his head. He's like, wait,
Yeah.
what did I just do?
So now he goes
Oh
knight
my
f5.
God.
And now g5.
G5. He takes the rook. All of these are probably premiums, but knight e4. Look at these knights. This knight is surely going to jump back. King g4. I think
It's like almost a mating that, right?
Yeah. G6, rook d2. Where do you go? King g1, I think. But there should be some way to checkmate. Wait. King g1. What about knight g3? G7,
knight g3 and king h3. Beautiful. And rook g2 mate. Wow.
I think that's
and you also
over.
have this knight at a3. Knight a3, knight c4, knight e3 can come in really quickly if you play something like king f1. So what was that? That was insane. Two huge blunders by both players in a row. But this looks, your move knight g3 looks crushing here, right? He goes king g3.
Okay, rook f1
Rook
on the
f1,
board.
no checkmate
You can
yet.
at the very least win the rook with rook g2.
Take back with the king, keep the g pawn under control.
Right, is there a checkmate? He takes on c4. Okay, g7. I guess that's our g7.
g7, he does rook g2, knight f2. Yeah.
Right, and you stop the pawn, and that's what he's going
goes for it.
You can go h5. Oh, h5, rook g4. That's game over right away. Rook h5 played, not over yet. There is rook g5.
And then rook g7, I guess rook f5 is the point. He's trying to grab as many pawns as possible.
Rook g1, king h2, knight. Oh, or just take the pawn.
Yeah, take the pawn. Yeah, he's going to allow rook f5, but the king is coming to d3. The h pawn is not far ahead enough, and Fedoseev should mop up these queenside pawns. This looks totally lost.
Yeah, and Hikaru looks frustrated. He knows it's over. He takes the pawn on c5, but king d3. Or wait, knight d2. Fedoseev is still going for checkmate with
Arabian mate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rook g5. Trade. This should be an easy win, but I feel like,
he could have done it a little cleaner, right? Even if this is winning.
I'm not 100% convinced by his conversion. So let's say king. Okay, he goes there, knight f5.
Yeah, he's going to go king d3, I think, right?
Yeah.
And Hikaru can run the king up the board, but even king c3, and he just resigns. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is you can't even run your king up the board, because if you go king f2, I take, and there's no king f3 because of this.
Right, check.
And Hikaru, clearly frustrated, leaves his chair. I mean, what was that? He had a tough game. Then at the moment Fedoseev blundered, he blundered back. Like, look at this. This is where it all happened.
Yeah, this king g7.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so after bishop f4, Fedoseev was winning here with the move knight takes c3. However, he played the move knight f6. Rook e1, good move by Hikaru. Now the position is approximately even, but the move king g7, massive blunder by Fedoseev, and I honestly don't know how Hikaru did not play the move knight to f5 check. I mean, it's just a very basic discovery. Instead, he first gave away his bishop and now went for this discovery, but the big difference is, of course, that black has an extra knight.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can explain it is that, sometimes you just, Hikaru had 37 seconds on the clock, right? I mean, he could have found that with 0.7 seconds on the clock as well, of course. But sometimes I think, when you're not expecting such a gift, he's playing this game, you're not anticipating it. Sometimes you're mentally just don't see it. But saying that, he did play a tactical shot, right? He played this bishop takes h6 move. So his mind was definitely on some kind of checks, some kind of, tactical play. I mean, Fedoseev also missed it himself. So just a double blindness moment there. And as you mentioned, I think Hikaru thought he had g5, but as you pointed out, then he maybe missed king h7. Then he would drop that. I'm struggling to explain it because these guys obviously can see this stuff in milliseconds, but just goes to show you the pressure of these long matches, or these matches, I should say, I guess, can cause even the best players in the world to make inexplicable mistakes. And now Hikaru has the black pieces in game 4. He's in a must-win situation.
Exactly, yeah. So the game has not started yet. Let's have a very quick look around the horn, what happened in the other games. So the game between Wesley So and Levon Aronian has ended in a draw. They're all tied up, 1.5, 1.5. Hikaru, like we said, he's down 2-1. He will have to win with the black pieces. And I'm curious what he's going to play. He's for sure not going to go e4, e5. We saw how in game number 2, he was struggling to make a draw. I think he's going to play something like the modern defense. That's what he always does in online chess. And I think it's probably his best bet. In the meantime, wait, Artemiev took the lead again against Magnus Carlsen. So Magnus also in a must-win situation with the black pieces. He came back in game number 2, but is he going to do it again in game number 4? Let's see. And the match between Fabiano Caruana and Laquang Liam, there we have 3 draws so far. So very interesting and all to play for in game number 4.
I'll throw my take into the ring real quick. What about a Kalashnikov in game 4? That was the opening Hikaru was able to use to score a decisive victory with the black pieces over Linier Dominguez. So perhaps we'll see him dust it off again, seeing if he could strike lightning twice. Although he also did use the Sicilian defense several times against Wesley. So those, I believe, were Ross Limo defenses. So yeah, the modern is, of course, something that Hikaru has played extensively. And it is also the opening that Wesley So was able to defeat him with the black pieces in a must-win. So that's a good take. But I'm wondering, hey, he just played a lot of Sicilians recently. Perhaps he has a couple more, unused, hidden gems up his sleeve that he can detonate for this crucial game here.
Yeah, so we'll see what he's going to do, whether he's going to play Sicilian again, maybe Kalashnikov or the modern defense. But I'm sure that Fedoseev is prepared in either case. But with all that being said, we are going to be taking a very short break. But don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss Hikaru's 4th game in this match. And we will see you guys very soon. And welcome back, everyone, to the Champions Chess Tour. We are now getting ready for game number 4. Hikaru just lost game number 3 with white pieces, so now he's in a must-win situation. And Alex, we discussed earlier before the break what he is going to do. What is your final pick? Do you think it's Sicilian, the modern defense, maybe Hikaru? What do you think?
I'm gonna just stick with Sicilian. You already took the modern. I think that's a great guess. I'm just going to stick, to my guns. It's what I want to see, to be honest. I feel like, at least based on his previous, his win against Dominguez, that seemed like a really interesting game, interesting line. So again, I wonder if it'll be outside of those 2 choices, but it feels like, he's like you said, he's probably not going to go E5. We just saw Fedoseev play this 4 nights, completely devoid of winning chances, and looks like we do have the Sicilian, but I'm not going to celebrate just yet. I do want to see if it was going to be, a Kalashnikov.
Yeah, and we have to move knight c6 on the board by Hikaru. And bishop e5, Fedoseev not going into the open Sicilian. And we have e5 by Hikaru. He's sticking to his guns. This is what he played against Wesley. But to be fair, I did not like the positions he got in that match. I feel like if white wants, can't white keep it very simple with the moves c3 and d4? Really, this is all they had. And I don't know, it felt like Wesley got an advantage in that match.
Yeah, I do remember they played it twice, I believe. They went to this line. And obviously, we do expect Hikaru has looked at it, right, since. As you mentioned, he said he did some preparation over the weekend. Of course, that also means that Fedoseev had an opportunity to study those games as well. This line itself with e5, I feel like this is like a new rising sort of meta, against the Ross Limo. People were not really playing this let's say like 3-4 years ago or something like that. But I've seen Magnus play this several times. Now Hikaru's playing it several times. The main move has been for years G6. Some other moves like E6 have been tried. But I guess this is a way that players are exploring now. And I don't remember the exact move order, but one of the games against Wesley, didn't Hikaru get his king on E7 in some position? There was some trade like that on E7, and he took back with the king. I guess we were not seeing the ball cloud here, but it does give rise to some of these slightly unusual motifs.
I think it was in this position right here. He played the move d6. Now Wesley played rook to d1, putting more pressure on this pawn. And the problem with the move rook d1 is that white is threatening to take on f6. You don't quite want to recapture with the pawn because you have a bunch of weaknesses. But if you take back with the bishop, then you hang this pawn. So Hikaru decided to solve that with move knight h5. And here took with the king, because again, if you take with the queen, you hang this pawn. So I think that's how that happened. But he played knight h5 here. Now Fedoseev took. But here he can just recapture with the queen, because there's no pawn on d6 hanging. After rook d1, he played knight f4. And Hikaru is still playing super quickly. So I guess this is his preparation. Probably he feels like this is slightly better compared to how he played against Wesley So. But I don't know, like already one set of minor pieces is off the board. I feel like if Fedoseev plays this well, he could probably keep the position somewhat controlled.
Right, but yeah, I think we see the clear outlines of Hikaru's plan. He would do, no king e7. We do expect him to castle, and it's not going to be an easy task. But I would imagine that if you can get something like d6 on the board and potentially f5, of course, not very simple with that bishop on c2, keeping an eye on that, you could try to generate some kind of kingside play. It kind of reminds me of this d6 e5 structure. It's kind of like a Nightorf, right? Kind of a strange one. And then white setup is kind of reminding me of a Rui Lopez. So it's kind of like a mix of all these different mainline openings. But at the very least, Hikaru has been able to get, you know, not the type of position he had in game 2, where it was like, okay, he's just playing defense for equalization. Here, obviously, it's a balanced pawn structure, and again, that's exactly what you need when you are playing for the win. And at the very least, as you pointed out, he's playing very fast, already has a 2-minute time advantage, so hopefully he can continue piling that pressure on throughout the game, which is going to cause Fedoseev to slip up.
Let's see, a4, I think a good move by Fedoseev. And it's not so easy to deal with this attack. Like maybe you go rook to b8, but this does give white the open a file, takes, and maybe you go something like knight a3 followed by bishop d3, putting some pressure on this pawn, and it will not be that easy to deal with that. If you go, I mean, b4, I'm a little bit concerned about a move like queen b6, attacking the knight, maybe this one over here. I don't know if it works, but definitely some issues for Hikaru to figure out. I think if you want to keep the game as complex as possible, the move b4 is what you have to do, because after rook b8 we see a bit of a simplification, and that's what Hikaru does. He goes for the move b4, and it's not that easy for white to resolve this tension, because you don't want to take and give black the b4 square. Also, if you play knight bd, also with the move b4, we restrict white's knight from going to a3, and if you go here we can take on c3, and white is forced to recapture with the pawn, because if you take with the queen, there is this fork. But as we speak, we see the move queen d2 by Fedoseev. Looks clever. He's attacking this, he's also attacking this, but in case we take now he can recapture with the knight.
Yeah, I would love to get my knight very quickly to c3. My dream is knight d5, and then eventually I push b4, b5, and I make that outside pass pawn on the queen side. Also queen d2, of course, striking at the d6 pawn, and it doesn't seem easy to defend it. Hikaru just doesn't defend it at all, right? Bishop g4, and I guess his idea is that if you do take on d6, he will happily, what will he do? I guess he has to trade off and play for dynamic compensation, you know, something like rook c8, king e7, take on f3, create some pressure against c3, because Fedoseev is going to be not as developed yet. So I guess maybe bishop f3 first you throw in, right? So that, or is there anything else here? Am I missing something? You're taking a little pause.
He played rook to c8, so he's just defending the knight on c6.
Okay.
And it's honestly not so easy for white to deal with this positional threat on f3. Now, white can take here, and at first glance you might think like, okay, white's up a pawn here, we're in the endgame. He only needs to draw. What is there not to like? But again, this threat is quite easy to deal with. It's not easy to develop the knight. You can go knight bd2. And you might think like, okay, this solves all of the issues, defending the knight, developing this knight to d2. But now we can take and pick up this pawn on c3. And black gets a pretty significant advantage, because this other knight can jump either to b4 or d4, and this bishop on c2 is actually pretty passive. So I like actually what Hikaru is doing. I don't see an easy way for Fedoseev to simplify the position. I think like if you trade the queens, that's only in Hikaru's favor, but you cannot play knight b2 now, because then you hang the queen obviously, and otherwise we're just going to take here. Like let's say you play something like this, we take here, you cannot recapture right away, because that allows a checkmate. And here actually you lose material, because if you take it, you can also recapture with the knight, and your bishop is hanging. So from a practical perspective, wait, the move a5. Wait, what is the idea? Does he just want to go into this line?
Yeah, so bishop f3 will force the queen trade, as you mentioned. Now, knight e7 no longer attacks c2. Obviously, Fedoseev is banking on this bishop a4 move, but okay, after takes, king e7, black is way more developed. I'm looking if there's some tactical strike. Take on c3, jump with the knight to d4 maybe, right away even. Knight d4 actually looks very strong, because you have to recapture it, right?
You have to take, look at this. If you take an e5, I think you just go rook d8. Ooh. You cannot take, because this leads to checkmate.
Ice skater.
And the potential, exactly. And there's no way to get this knight out. This knight is completely trapped. It cannot go here, it cannot go here, which also means this rook can never go out. So if white goes here, you just take here, and there's nothing black can do, nothing white can do. You can even just go king e6, king c5. White can just resign here. So Fedoseev is already in a world of trouble. Really a dream opening for Hikaru in this must-win situation. I think the only thing you have to do is probably take and go 92. You have to get this knight into the game as quickly as possible, but let's say we take here. Hikaru's got everything going for him here. The pawns are equal. This rook is active. This knight is an absolute beast. You have a very strong passer. And yeah, this is just a catastrophic opening for Fedoseev.
Yeah, I mean, this knight on a 4 is a total monster, even in that variation. You know, if you put the pawn on d3, it's never moving from there. So, yeah, dream opening sequence for Hikaru, as you mentioned. Obviously, he was able to go back and analyze his games against Wesley So and improve on that game. And what does Fedoseev even do here? Because if he doesn't take on d4, Hikaru is just going to chop the pawn on f3. The knight on f4 remains extremely powerful. Also, as you brought up earlier, I could possibly take on c3, and there's these 92 ideas. So it looks like this has gone horribly wrong for Fedoseev, and Hikaru is in the driving seat, also on a massive time advantage, on top of already his dominant position. And that one line you showed was extremely beautiful, where White was up like 2 pawns, but literally none of the pieces could move. Perhaps, you know, this whole plan that Fedoseev played queen d2, queen d6, right? You're saying, oh, you know, how can this be bad? You're up a pawn, you're trading queens. Perhaps, again, he knew he needed a draw, and because of that, he was trying to avoid maybe some of the more, you know, sharper lines, just going for this queen trade. But even here, this turned out to be a very, very dire endgame, and it looks like he's just, I mean, what does he even do? What does he even play here to get any practical chances?
I honestly don't know. It seems like he's completely tied up. So first things first, your bishop is under attack, right? So we have to address that. Let's say you go bishop to d3. I think we just take here, go rook h8, and you can pretty much resign. I think you're just losing a piece here. And in case you go bishop a4, we probably do something similar. I think we just take here, play something like rook hd8. And White is having a really tough time to move their pieces out. This knight cannot go to d2, cannot go here, cannot... I mean, eventually White's going to have to take and get this knight in that way. But it looks super difficult for White. And it's really interesting because I thought initially in this position right here that the move queen e2 was really clever, but it's actually a big mistake. I thought like, hey, he's putting pressure on that pawn on b4 and the pawn on d6. But bishop g4 was a brilliant move by Hikaru, and especially after queen takes, rook c8 is really strong. There is just no good way to deal with this threat, and in the endgame, all of the problems continue, and that's what we saw in this game Fedoseev played here. And yeah, Hikaru's really got a dream opening here. Bishop a4 after some thought by Fedoseev. Now Hikaru takes the pawn, king h1, and I'm sure he's gonna be looking at the move rook hd8 here.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we pointed out multiple times, this knight in b1, it can't move. It's pawn in b4. As you mentioned earlier, you know, that's a great call. You said, hey, if you're looking, you want to keep winning chances, don't go rook b8, go b4, maintain that tension in the position. Exactly what Hikaru has done. And if the knight in b1 can't move, then the rook at a1 can't move. And at this point, Hikaru is, I mean, he's not even down any material, right? At first we're saying, oh, he's giving up the pawn. He's gotten the pawn back on f3. Rook d8 looks like a terrific decision there. Again, White is just not in time, I think, to, you know, if you could play take on b4, knight c3, you know, maybe even throw in knight d5. But Hikaru is very quick, you know, he'll be able to play invade with his rook. And the moment that knight moves, you know, to even c3, you got rook d2 on the board. So, yeah, I mean, looks like this game, and he goes king takes. That way you can't even take him b4 now because of rook c1.
Interesting decision, but it does allow the move bishop to d1. So I think, yeah, like you said, he didn't want to take with the rook because here White takes. And even though a rook is very active, we don't have any entry squares. I mean, d1 is covered, d2 is covered. We don't have something decisive here right away. So I really love the move king takes d8. Now bishop d1 has been played by Fedoseev, attacking the knight on f3, and he goes knight to g5. Now I wonder what exactly he's going to do after the move f3. What are you... Okay, you don't want to go knight d2, you hang the pawn on c3, but f3 still holds the pawn on e4.
Yeah, I was wondering if, I don't really want to move that knight, but I was even wondering about something like knight d3. Obviously you have a fork on f2, you attack the b2 pawn. But yeah, I guess if I'm in Hikaru's shoes, I'm thinking about one or two things. Either I try to maximize my position before this knight and rook come out, you know, try to grab as many pawns as possible, or can I focus on just kind of keeping them completely entombed and just kind of play for total restriction?
I have an idea. If White goes f3, what if we go rook to c6? And look at this. White goes, let's say, bishop a4. I go rook g6, and all of a sudden,
You got a
getting
smothered
into a
mate.
mating net because I go here, rook f1 stops knight f2, but I go
Rook G1. Beautiful. Beautiful. The double knight checkmate. That is incredible. Rook C6, Rook G6. That is a gorgeous idea there. Switching the rook to an outright checkmating attack. And what do we have? We have Rook A4 from Fedoseev. So he doesn't even try to defend that E4 pawn, just prioritizing getting that rook into the game.
Knight
H3. Was there anything wrong with knight E4, by the way? I was curious because then I don't know. I take a pawn, I create a fork on F2, but knight H3. I guess he still has that idea of rook C6, rook G6, right?
Yeah, I like this one better because first of all, we're just threatening a fork. Like if you take here, you take the pawn and then the bishop. I guess White's only move here might be... No, wait, I think there's no move. I was thinking bishop F3, so that after rook C6 we go bishop G2, but it doesn't change anything. We just go rook G6 anyway. And you're simply getting checkmated. So what does Fedoseev even play? I honestly don't see a move. I think this might already be over.
Yeah, especially with this rook C6 idea. I mean, the engine's already saying your best move is to lose the bishop, right? That's how dire the situation is. Rook takes b4. And the king on h1 is completely boxed in by the knights. Yeah, just no move. You can try to move the bishop, but as you pointed out, you don't even have bishop a4 now, which would stop rook c6. So this is an extreme, I mean, a 25 move victory for Hikaru on demand with the black pieces. Just a powerful, powerful display. I mean, I don't think Fedoseev is going to resign here just yet because, you know, you don't want to just concede the game that early. You still have to come to terms with it, but this looks like a foregone conclusion, especially with this rook lift. So an incredible, incredible comeback victory for Hikaru. Not his first, and we are expecting this to go to the playoff, the Blitz playoff, right? After this game.
Yeah, absolutely shocking how easily he's coming back with the black pieces. I mean, I knew it was not over, but I didn't expect him to win this easily with the black pieces. And yeah, absolutely crushing. I mean, he found some incredible attacking ideas. Fedoseev goes for the move knight to d2. So he's giving up the pawn on f2 and with it the bishop on c3. Sorry, on d1. But he's also giving up the pawn on c3. So Hikaru is really spoiled for choice here. Honestly, he just goes rook to c6, knight f1 on the board. We can now take the bishop. I mean, everything has to be winning here. His idea is that rook g6 can now be met with knight at g3. He knows he's completely lost, but I think it makes some sense to play on. Just make Hikaru beat you here. And he can also, as he plays, get some tilt off, but after he takes c3, he just pressed the resign button.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point. A lot of times, you know, like you said, get the tilt off, right? Just kind of like use this game to, you know, you play it a little bit to the bitter end. You know you're losing. Everyone knows you're losing, but it's kind of like a personal thing, psychological. Like, okay, get the negative emotions out and then refresh the next game. But Vladimir, I mean, his position, he has seen enough. He sees, Hikaru's not even taking an f2. He's just, casually taking the c3 pawn. I mean, that was a beautiful performance from Hikaru. I'm glad to have made the right guess on his opening. Perhaps, he was influenced. He heard me say Kalashnikov and you modern, so he decided to go with my choice. But yeah, this has been a phenomenal weapon for him. I mean, this is already, we talked about his win against Dominguez, obviously, in the classical portion. That was in the Kalashnikov. This is in the Ross Limo. So he's obviously put in some great work on these lines and an extremely, extremely one-sided victory for Hikaru here, who takes all the momentum heading into the Armageddon playoff.
Yeah, great stuff by Hikaru. He equalized the match. And yeah, we're going into the Armageddon. We saw him typing there, so I'm sure they asked him in a Zoom, hey, how much time are you bidding? For those of you who don't know how it works, what basically happens now is they are going to play an Armageddon game in which White will have to win, but White will also get a time advantage. So both players will bid as to how much time they're willing to play with as Black, and whoever bids lowest gets that time, and White will get 15 minutes. So I'm curious how much Hikaru is going to bid. I think against Wesley, so he bid like 8 minutes and 20 seconds or 8 seconds, something around that. 6 minutes and 40 seconds to me really seems way too low. But, you guys in the chat can let us know how much time do you think he's gonna bid, or how much time would you bid in this situation? But yeah, it's definitely looking great. I mean, in this game, he only needed 3 minutes to beat Fedoseev with Black. So I think he can afford to bid somewhat low.
But there is no increment, I believe, in this Armageddon playoff, so it changed it. While we wait for those bids, you want to check out Magnus's game? He's also in a must-win situation with black against Vladislav Artemiev. And while Hikaru was able to pull off a dominating performance, here, this seems less likely for Magnus as I'm looking at his position. Once you have a chance to pull that up, Artemiev played an extremely solid opening, obviously provoking Magnus to come at him. And yeah, it just turned out that it's not really looking good for the still world champion for, I guess, one more week.
Yeah, f6, good move by Magnus. He wants to undermine this pawn on e5. Magnus also up a little bit of time on the clock, but yeah, let's see whether he can make the comeback here. If not, he will end up in the loser's bracket. But yeah, we were talking about tilt earlier. If I was Fedoseev, I would certainly be tilted because he has been working so hard in this match to get a lead, and then he just throws it away in 20 moves with the white pieces where he only needs to draw. So that must definitely be upsetting. But yeah, great stuff by Hikaru. And I think maybe for Fedoseev, the pressure just got to him. Like, you just start doing weird things in these types of situations. And by the way, great find here by Artemiev. Look at this.
Bishop f4 F5. Coming next as well.
And wait, how does Magnus keep the game going here? I feel like you're probably just losing too much material. Is there something like FG that work?
Maybe then queen g3, I guess. But then you can go queen b7. Yeah, he is on the board. There's also queen e3, actually. Wow, that's a nice one. You hit e6 and h6. And the skewer. That's a nasty one.
Right, so yeah, queen e3, I guess maybe something like queen f7, and then you take the knight, I suppose. F takes g4 is on the board. I think Magnus realizes that he has to go down this variation. If it loses, that's too bad, but he has to go for this. So let's see what Artemiev is going to do. He's got 5 minutes on the clock. Queen e3, is there something like knight f5? It's still very tricky.
Oh yeah, queen e6, queen f4. Okay, well, at the very least, it looks like Artemiev does pick up that rook on b8, right? So, okay, originally I'm saying queen g3. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like Magnus will have enough. I mean, I guess if you're really optimistic for black, right, you're going to hope that you can get a rook to the g file and just try to create any sort of threats with the minor pieces. But objectively, I doubt that's enough, especially with the rooks having very easy access to open files for Artemiev. It just shouldn't be enough compensation. So that would be, again, this is a double knockout format, but still ending up in the loser's bracket from the first match would obviously be quite an upset for Artemiev. And interestingly enough, we saw in this match, there were 3 decisive games, right? So they were trading blows with the black pieces. So a huge battle here, but nevertheless, it looks like Magnus is on his way to be upset in the first match here.
Yeah, we see queen g3 and queen b7 on the board. Now I'm sure Artemiev is probably just going to take the rook. And I wonder if Magnus is going to recapture with his rook. I think it's the move you want to make to keep as much play in the position as possible. But is there this move bishop takes c6?
Ooh.
In case black takes, we take the rook on b8. It's not completely over yet because black can, let's say, block with the bishop. And white's king is still pretty exposed if you can get g takes h3 or queen f3 in. So it still remains somewhat double-edged. Also, look at Artemiev's clock. He just dropped below 4 minutes, and Magnus still has 7 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock. I think practically you should take with the rook. Just keep as many pieces on the board as possible. I feel like after queen takes, you're just not going to win this position.
Right.
You might draw at best, or maybe just this, followed by a rook here.
But then here, aren't you giving black a little bit of hope? They take h3, knight g4, you know, like h2, the bishop coming to h6, just kind of feels like you're getting, you know, like if you just eliminate that pawn on g4 or you trade on g4 or something like that. You pointed out like rook d6 as well. You just don't give him really any of that hope.
I like this idea, taking with the pawn and then taking here, and just going rook a8, trading off some pieces, getting as much play out of the position as possible. And I feel like Artemiev shouldn't lose there. However, there are some ideas with bishop f8, because if you go rook a8, there's a check now, and wherever you go, you end up in
very clever. You got all these forks.
It's not over yet. So Magnus weighing his options. Queen takes b8 might be the better move, and like we discussed, it might not be completely over just yet. But I'm sure he would love to make this work somehow. But I don't know how. After bishop takes c6, maybe you just move the queen and you just pray. I mean, it makes some sense, to be fair.
Yeah, funnily enough, the bishop on c6 is still not hanging, right? So you don't need to necessarily move it just yet. Otherwise, I was going to say, well, you know, if you can actually get that pawn on h3, that feels like it always gives you some practical chances just to have the pawn so close to the promotion square, as we actually saw in game one, Hikaru Fedoseev, right? All of a sudden, Fedoseev had a winning tactic there. But yeah, Magnus thinking the good news is for him that he does have a little time to burn. Obviously, I think he sees these variations. It's just about making the practical decision. Where am I most likely to get winning chances, even at the cost of, you know, burning all the bridges? And it looks like he has actually gone to trade the queen. So I guess he just decided he want to keep them on, but it's just not enough. But like you pointed out, okay, so he does go bishop c6 immediately. I thought maybe he should trade on g4. But yeah, after rook a8, you take a one pair of rooks off the board. Your other rook can invade via d6 or d8. So I guess Artemiev is just trying to play it very safe here.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's looking at the move rook to a8 here. So let's have a look. So black's going to take, we recapture. And I don't know, to be fair, after bishop f8, bishop coming to c5, knight coming to g4, there's definitely still chances. I mean, all of these are not the prettiest pawns, but there are three of them. And if you can somehow get them moving forward, you will get some chance. And also, again, Artemiev has 3 minutes on the clock, so this game is far from being over. That being said, I feel like Artemiev should not lose. He should find some way to simplify here and make the draw. But if his clock keeps ticking down lower and lower, you can't count Magnus out.
I mean, you said it yourself for the Hikaru's game, right? Sometimes when you're in these situations, you're playing one of these, you know, Hikaru Magnus, one of the, you know, massive, you know, behemoths of the chess world. Sometimes, you know, you're up that 2-1, you start getting these, you know, funny thoughts, you know, start feeling the pressure, and you just allow these chances. And this rook d6 move, I'm wondering, you know, if in the future that's just going to help Magnus, because now bishop f8 comes with tempo. And for Magnus, you know, not only does he have these, you know, 3 admittedly split pawns, he's got the bishop pair. Specifically, the dark square bishop has no counterpart. So I love that idea with putting it on c5. The g7 square, obviously, very passive here. If it goes to c5, though, that's going to be hard to deal with. And again, his clock dropping under 3 minutes. Yeah, takes. Now bishop, yep, we saw on the board. It looks like, practically speaking, especially with the clock ticking, you know, maybe you go bishop c5, knight f5, try to bring all these pieces in. That is going to pose some real legitimate problems for white.
Yeah, and he goes king g7 here right away. I was really surprised. Yeah, I wonder what exactly Magnus's idea is. He's attacking the rook. No, obviously we do not take the pawn on b6 because that blunders rook due to bishop to c5. But let's say we go... I don't know where you go, though. That's... Like, if you go here, there might be moves like, let's say, bishop c5 check. And if you go to h1, then all of a sudden there's knight f5. But I feel like black's counterplay is enough to draw at most. Like, let's say we go king h2. Does black have anything better than check and this? I mean,
I was thinking knight f5 again. I have a funny idea in one of those lines. Let's say king h1. With the bishop on c5 or not. But anyway, I was going to say, when the knight gets c4, you could even try, like, it's a little slow, but like h5, h4, and then knight g3, right? And then your dream scenario is that all of a sudden you undouble those pawns. Of course, here you do not want to give up your dark square bishop, but eventually I think that is probably the idea. And just kind of and utilize, you know, the maximum of the resources in your position. Even if these pawns are doubled, you can still utilize them to control some squares. And here we get wow, okay, so Artemiev
takes f8.
Gets rid of that bishop, so he's going to be down a pawn in this endgame, admittedly a doubled one. So he thinks he can just draw this.
Might be a great decision. Like, let's say you go knight d5 now. He goes bishop b4 first, which also seems fine. He's attacking the pawn on h7. And I think it's going to be super difficult here for Magnus to keep the game going. So I think for Magnus, it might have been a mistake to go king g7 so quickly. Why not go bishop c5, making sure that that bishop remains on the board, and now go king g7? White's going to move their rook, but at least here we have a little bit more play. But I think this makes a lot of sense. Bishop b4, king g7. What about knight to d5 now? And the only thing Magnus can maybe hope for is if he can somehow get his king all the way to g3. Knight d5, b5 is on the board. Maybe bishop d3 here? It's not over. I mean, as long as this pawn stays on h3, this game is still anything can happen.
Yeah, but it feels like, you know, Artemiev is going to try to get his own pass pawn on the queen side. Obviously, he's got a 2-1 majority. Bishop d3 looks really logical, trying to You know what there might be after something like bishop d3? Gotta watch like bishop f3 and knight g4. Although even then, after bishop f3, you could still play knight e3 at the very least to prevent that invasion. I like that bishop in e4 a lot though, because now you never have to worry. You know, that h pawn is well under control. You have this f3 square under control. The knight on h6 can't really move forward. So yeah, I was even wondering here. It's a little slow, but just trying to play like b3 c4, right? Just trying to get a pass pawn, distract black's pieces. And again, the major issue for Artemiev here, I think, is the clock, right? Like he's got 30 seconds. And in those situations, you can really do something stupid that you normally would never do here. And of course, Magnus is famous for being a total wizard in the endgame. So we do have b3 on the board from Artemiev. I'm always a little worried when they play my moves. You know, sometimes they're not the best, but it does seem to be somewhat logical.
Right. I do like the fact that his knight and his bishop are restricting black's path forward with king f6 and king g5. But as we were speaking, Hikaru is in the chat and he said, well, boys, I guess we have to wait another 15 minutes till the Armageddon. I guess it's going to start 15 minutes after the top of the hour. And then he also added, Google TV is possible, Fire is unlikely due to it being Amazon. So, yeah, Hikaru is getting ready for Armageddon, but it does seem like there's still a little bit of time in between. I guess that is in Fedoseev's favor, and here we have the time. So Fedoseev bid 12 minutes and 25 seconds, and that tells me that Fedoseev wanted to play with white, because Hikaru is known to bid lower. Hikaru bid 9 minutes and 38 seconds, but he will have the draw odds, and I'm curious to see if he's going to go for the same line. Maybe the players have plenty of time to look up any variations, and so yeah, Fedoseev, probably he won't be blown off the board as he got in game number 4. Hikaru said, I am writing. Next game is after all the games end.
Got it. So after all the games finish in this division, then 10 more minutes, right? And then we'll have the Armageddon. Yeah, it's interesting. Fedoseev bidding 12-20. I mean, he must, like you said, he must have won to the white pieces. He's not deterred, obviously, by this brutal loss that he suffered here. And that's a good question. You know, is Hikaru going to repeat the line? Because, you know, that game he needed a win, and he got it. And, you know, so you think, okay, is he going to go back to something more solid, you know, like e4, e5? But when you get such a good position, right, clearly showing, you know, the depth and his preparation and how comfortable he is with those structures, it's a good point. It's like, you know what? Okay, yeah, I need a draw, but if I'm just getting good positions playing the quote unquote winning attempt, why not just stick with it, right? So, yeah, we'll have a chance to see that. Vladimir will have an extra 3 minutes on the clock, no increment, but still 9:30. As you said, you know, Hikaru did like 6 something against Wesley. That is obviously a major difference. He still has plenty of time for the.
Doesn't Fedoseev get 15 minutes? I think that is how it works. Like,
yes, 15.
Right. So Hikaru, he is going to be down 5.5 minutes, which is definitely significant. However, 9.5 minutes is still a lot of time. And I remember, didn't Magnus bid something like 8:58 against Hikaru? So
yeah, it was like
Hikaru,
8:58 versus like 8:59 or something like that. Yeah, it's something crazy.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like bidding below 10, you really have very good chances of getting the black pieces. That's also what Hikaru feels the most comfortable with. In the meantime, let's have a look here. Artemiev is down to his last seconds. Bishop c8 has been played, c4. I like the move b4 by Magnus. He's making it as difficult as possible for Artemiev to run up this pawn. He goes knight d3, but now Magnus can come up with the king. King h2, and and he finds knight g4. You cannot take because you walk into a discovery. So you have to go king g3. Are there any tricks for Magnus?
I mean, 4 seconds for Vladislav here. I mean, even with the 3-second increment, you can definitely blunder something.
Oh,
King
wait,
G3?
He blundered, I think. Wait, didn't he? King g3.
What's going on? King g5, h5, h4? What's going on?
And bishop f5. Wait, what do you do here? If you take white queen...
Oh, he lost
he's just
on time,
resigned.
or... I think he lost maybe even on time, because his time is 5 seconds. That's not possible, right? You can't make a move at 0 seconds on the clock.
He probably resigned, yeah.
Wait,
I guess you just go knight c5. Knight c5.
Knight c5 and you have a check. But then king f5 after that? After we trade on e4?
Ah, yes.
And then I'm still attacking your knight while I'm threatening promotion. I think he just flagged, to be honest, because I saw his time go to 0. I'm not sure if maybe he did resign, but it feels like you just try anything, right? You know, at this point. But this is still losing. Incredible. Yeah. So is this just...
Again, anything can happen when you're down to your final seconds. In this position right here, he panicked because he saw like, hey, Magnus is going to go h5 to h4, and it's not easy to deal with that. So he took that pawn. He realized like, okay, after h2, I can go bishop to e4. But at his last second, he might have missed the move bishop to f5. And there's nothing you can do. If you take the bishop, black queens, and so black wins. And otherwise, black's just going to take this bishop over here. And you cannot move the bishop because then you hang the knight. So I think Magnus made some great decisions, especially with this move, pawn to b4. He's keeping as many pawns on the board as possible. Because now, in case he ever wins his b3 pawn, he can still win the game with his b pawn. And he's just making it as difficult as possible for Artemiev to get this pawn on the board. He went knight d3, but again, now the king comes up. Artemiev didn't want to allow this king to h4 because then knight g4 might follow. It still feels like white should hold this. I mean, let's say you... But yeah, Magnus just...
It's getting a little tricky, right? This is a great idea. He just gives up the pawn on b4. It's all about trying to make this h-pawn run. So he's willing to give it up. The king gets activated. Artemiev, again, he was playing this whole position with like 5-10 seconds. So all of a sudden, Magnus is creating the threats, giving him something to think about, inducing mistakes. This is also why earlier I was really surprised that he let him take an h3. It felt like, look, as long as that pawn remains on the board, something can always happen with the promotion. So I was really, personally, I would have definitely taken on g4. I don't know, objectively, the engine was saying this is fine. But again, we saw what happened, right? At the end of the day, it was that pawn that played the deciding factor in this endgame. And Magnus, again, shows his wizardry. And just like Hikaru is able to stave off elimination. And this is a very curious match, by the way, because all games were decisive for the black pieces, which is, I don't know, that must be exceedingly rare in top-level chess. But we got it 4 times here.
An absolute miracle that Magnus pulled off the win there. So let's see what's happening in the matchup between Wesley So and Levon Aronin. It's looking pretty good for Wesley, who is up in exchange. If he wins this game, he will win the match. Check here. I guess bishop d3 is forced, otherwise black is picking up way too many pawns. King d4, maybe now it's a good time to take, and that's what he does. 66. But this has to be lost for Levon. I mean, you're down in exchange.
Yeah, especially this rook f6 moves, very nice. Yeah, that's the only danger, right? Like if you lose the a7 pawn and that starts running.
Yes, we saw too many times today that you shouldn't keep pawns on the board if they're too close to the promotion square. So just take it off the board and you'll win the game. And I think
absolutely that would be an easily winning rook endgame with 2 extra pawns. Levon is also playing off the increment. Let's see, Wesley.
I would just do this here, or this, one of the two.
Oh, he's actually got he's up 3 pawns. I thought he was up 2. I can't even count him. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, no, three is like. I'll be pretty sure that I can win an endgame up 3 pawns. So, and there we have the rook takes a6 on the board. And I think, he's playing on here, knowing that hey, nobody has ever won a game by resigning. Maybe your opponent can disconnect, but and there.
But he throws in the towel.
Yep. So Wesley So wins, and he moves on in the winner's bracket. I think he is gonna play the winner of the match between. No. Wait, who's he? He's gonna play either Hikaru or Fedoseev.
And he also actually lost the first game. I remember we tuned in just to see the very end, and it looked like a dominating victory for Levon. 6 extra minutes on the clock, but it turned out, that he was able to equalize and actually take the lead in the match. So. And who else is left there? There's also the match we saw between Likwang Lem and Caruana, where it seemed like Caruana missed a huge chance in game 1. The games have been going on peacefully. How are they doing in game number 4?
Let's have a look. But yeah, as we were talking, Hikaru was just in the chat. He said, y'all rock. Really, I'm sure he appreciates everyone cheering him on here. So, just to recap real quick. Wesley So wins his match 2.5, 1.5 against Levon Aronian. Then Hikaru and Fedoseev will play an Armageddon game. Magnus and Artemiev are also going to play an Armageddon game after Magnus pulled off that miraculous comeback. And Likwang Liem and Fabiano Caruana all draw so far. They're playing a very, very tight match, so they're going to Armageddon as well.
3 Armageddons coming up for us. Only Wesley So has punched his ticket to the next round. Although, even if you do lose this match, you don't go home just yet. You do have another chance through the loser's bracket, as they call it. But yeah, this is going to be very, very exciting. We have Hikaru. We know the times for them. I'm sure the other players are currently in the process of their bids, submitting, what time they want, and we'll be back to cover the action for Hikaru with the black pieces against Fedoseev. Now Fedoseev is in a must-win situation.
And welcome back everyone to the Champions Chess Tour. We are just getting ready for the Armageddon game that's going to be played between Vladimir Fedoseev and Hikaru Nakamura, and they are off. Alex, we have an English opening by Fedoseev. What do you make of this opening choice?
We just saw Hikaru dominate with the black pieces in the Sicilian, so Fedoseev is getting far away from the e-pawn as possible, going to c4. I mean, I guess he would maybe consider b4 if it was a little bit better. But indeed, we still have a Sicilian, this time a reverse Sicilian. It's kind of funny to say that. We have like a reverse Rossolimo almost position. Yeah, again, just for everyone joining us, we are in the Armageddon portion after a 2-2 split between Hikaru and Fedoseev. Hikaru just won a really, really beautiful, dominating game with the black pieces. He has been 9 minutes and around 30 seconds to start, so he has draw odds, but Fedoseev has a time advantage. And yeah, it's interesting to see Fedoseev completely went away from e4. Of course, these guys were just on like around a 20-minute break, so perhaps Fedoseev had time to think about his strategy, maybe look at some of the slides, and he has decided to go for the English opening.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things Hikaru can do, and there's a lot of things he has done against the English opening. He has often also gone for this setup with e6 and d5, going into a bit of a neo-Catalan, where often he likes to play with the move bishop to e7. But here goes for e5, and he's often gone d5 here, but he's gone for something a bit more solid. Bishop b4, c5, e3. I think here the main move is the move knight f3. This does get extremely sharp after the moves e4. I don't know, wait, this is not the line, but there's some line in which...
Where there's like some g5 move, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
Something like that. But d3, I guess Fedoseev wants to avoid a theoretical discussion, which is understandable. Because in a game in which a draw is fine, you can sometimes go into a theoretical line, and then it's like, okay, if your opponent knows everything, they make a draw, and it's not the end of the world. But here, for Fedoseev, a draw is the end of the world, because he will get eliminated, or he will go to the loser's bracket. But I feel like what Hikaru has gotten is quite fine. I like the move knight d4, initiating some trades. Fedoseev decides to keep the knights on the board with the move knight at d2. Hikaru goes a5, stopping the b4 push and making sure that his bishop can drop back to a7. Castles c6, a clever little move, neutralizing the bishop on the long diagonal. Rook b1, bishop g4, h3. The moves are flying in quickly, but I think Hikaru can be satisfied about the outcome of the opening. He's got the center. However, Fedoseev also cannot be too unhappy because there's still a lot of play left in the position.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if, with the time playing a much bigger factor of force in this game than the others, Fedoseev may have been hoping to play a little bit of a long game, like a slow, long game. As the game goes on, 40, 50, 60 moves, the time becomes more and more important. Of course, Hikaru, one of the best, if not the best, blitz player in the world. Super experienced, super quick when he needs to be. So yeah, again, he's only spent a minute and we are already on move 18. Fedoseev, though, he does now have a legitimate plan. He's putting pressure on this d5 pawn. You were mentioning how this c6 and pawn move was clever to shut out the bishop. Now Fedoseev is saying, well, you got that pawn there. It's going to be a target. He doesn't have the opportunity to play bishop g5 because of Hikaru's very foresighted move h6. So the pawn on d5 is not going to be able to be assailed that way. But it looks like for the first time, Hikaru has slowed down, as you've helpfully drawn for us that d5 and b7 pawns are targets, and Hikaru is offering a double pawn sacrifice. You can take on a4 or b7. So what are the consequences of those moves?
Yes, I think actually he cannot take wait, no, he actually can. I thought the move queen a5.
Yeah, just come back, yeah.
But you just go back. So yeah, Hikaru already in some trouble, and this is where we see that the time disparity is an issue, because Fedoseev has a little bit of time to come up with something to pose Hikaru problems, and if Hikaru has problems that he needs to solve, it's super tough because you don't really have the time. You don't want to fall too far behind. But okay, he's gone for a4, sack the pawn. Now he's gone e4, trying to blast open the center. But Fedoseev just dropped his knight back to c3. And honestly, it's not clear to me what Hikaru is going to do here. Fedoseev's just up a pawn, putting pressure on d5 and d4, and I don't see it. I don't see it. And Hikaru's down 5 minutes. It's looking tough.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Fedoseev wants. Like you said, right now Hikaru has to play, some kind of he can't just tread, and just kind of maintain equality. The onus is on him to prove something, right? Because if you don't do anything drastic, Fedoseev is, he has no weaknesses in this position. He has this beautiful dragon sort of pawn formation, 0 targets, and with the extra pawn, he's going to have the, obviously the advantage. So I actually, just aesthetically speaking, I did like that move e4, right? The knight goes away from the center of the board, so Hikaru just starts blasting there. But now, again, where is he going to follow? If I'm playing white, I would love to, of course, finish my development. It's not so simple, though, right? If I play a move like e3 or something like that to kick out your bishop with the white pieces, like let's say here or something, then it's a little bit annoying. I block my bishop. I don't have access to d1. But at the same time, moving that bishop from c1, it's a little tricky to find a good square even before e3. So still, Hikaru does have the central domination for the moment, makes it a little tricky for Fedoseev to finish his development. But still, the 6-minute time advantage is obviously going to be key for Fedoseev to make the most of his chances.
Exactly, and also an extra pawn. So he played rook to d1,
Yes.
pinning the bishop on d4. Queen b6, probably the only move by Hikaru, but it does trade the queens, which is generally not ideal when you're down a pawn. And now I think Fedoseev just has to move out this bishop, let's say to f4. Looks pretty reasonable. And I'm having a hard time seeing the compensation for Hikaru. He's down 5 minutes on the clock. Keep in mind, you guys, there is no increment. There's no increment. He has to make up the time disparity at some point. Otherwise, you are just going to lose on time. And bishop 4 is on the board.
Right, and I was even thinking earlier there could be some kind of g5 ideas for black, just trying to at least disturb his white development, but it seemed like he could just go possibly to d6. Yeah, there's also something like g5 e3. I was wondering if that was on the table. And Hikaru has played bishop g6 first, then e3 was a very serious threat. But now Fedoseev plays e3 himself. He could also play perhaps g4 in the future to give that bishop some room to escape. And yeah, I mean it is an extra pawn. I'm not sure if I'm seeing the compensation for Hikaru. He's also a little tied down to this e4 pawn for the moment. What is his play here, or is there just none for Hikaru? He just kind of has to be a shell and defend.
Yeah, he's just played bishop to a5, putting pressure on the knight. The knight jumped to b5, and now rook e8. Fedoseev can play knight d6 here, perhaps, attacking the pawn on b7. Hikaru clearly looks unhappy, but he has to get himself together. He has to keep fighting here. Also, look at the clock. Fedoseev still has a noticeable time advantage. It's 5 minutes. But before it was 6, and this is one thing that is so tricky in Armageddon. Like, I've had this myself. Like, you're up so much time, but it can evaporate quickly. So I think he's doing a good job. He's, keeping up the pace, bishop e5, putting pressure on the knight, and I don't know, it looks tough for Hikaru. I mean, it feels like white is up a pawn and has a good position. Maybe just b4 now?
Yeah, 98 for Hikaru. I guess he wants to cover these d6, d7 squares from invasion. Possibly even play f5 if the pressure gets too much in the e4 pawn. Bishop f1 is a nice move. Now you can reroute the bishop to c4 to give it an open diagonal. And Fedoseev also has access to this very nice d4 square, right? He can put it, at some point, any of his minor pieces there, and it will serve as a useful transfer point. Hikaru, again, as you mentioned, still the time deficit is there, 5 minutes, but more importantly, it just seems like a good position for Fedoseev. No real compensation for Hikaru. The extra pawn, though, is the A pawn, right? If you kind of look at the pawn symmetry. So it's not a pawn that's going to be immediately useful, but of course, in the future, b4, a4, a5, if possible, will give white a tremendous pass pawn. So yeah, I think Hikaru, I like bishop e6, right? Now he can potentially play bishop e3, at least disturbing white's coordination. He doesn't allow bishop c4. So I think he's going to be poking and prodding, just making it difficult for Fedoseev to advance. We did see him hold a worse, position in game 2. And again, the good thing is, even if he's in trouble, he only needs a draw. All he needs is a draw, which will punch his ticket through. So he's in it for the long haul, just trying to, tough it out till the end here.
Exactly. And Hikaru is speeding up. He's now only down 4 minutes on the clock. Bishop c7 has just been played. I'm sure Fedoseev is looking at the line starting with knight to c7, followed by bishop to b6, but he goes rook ac1 right away. This knight on b5 is an absolute beast. It's putting a lot of pressure on black's queen side. And it's also always defending the pawn on a3. So really tough position here for Hikaru, but we know his defensive skills. Like, he's so good at defending tough positions. And he's trying to keep it together with a move rook to d7. Maybe he wants to go bishop to d8. White's up a pawn. And I don't see any compensation for black, but you still actually have to win the game, right? But the evil bar just updated. It gives white a +3 advantage. And actually, I like the move g4. Now you can go bishop to g2. Putting a lot of pressure on this pawn on e4, because now in case of f5, white can take and the pawn remains isolated. You can play h5 And that's what Hikaru does in case white takes f5. And again, look at the clock. Now he's down less than 4 minutes on the clock. So he's fighting as hard as he can to try to come back in this clock. He knows, like, hey, if I also get down on the clock, it's gonna be too much. Like a tough position and the clock, but at least he's fighting back on that end.
Absolutely. He's making up a little bit of the time. And I do really like this h5 move. Again, just kind of giving something for Fedoseev to think about as well, right? Not chipping into his time advantage. Also, we saw in the previous game, Fedoseev, he was looking good in the match. Suwon, all of a sudden, a total collapse. So again, it's not impossible for, even the best players to falter under pressure. And that's what Hikaru needs to do here. Start applying some kind of pressure, any way you can. I think this trade here was pretty decent for Hikaru because he has that e4 pawn was a cause of concern. Now, at least he doesn't have to worry about that. Saying that, objectively speaking, all three of white's minor pieces seem to be better than black's, right? The two bishops are strong. The knight in b5 is extremely multi-purpose, defending a3. Bishop b6, Hikaru does activate his own bishop, but king f2. Yeah, it looks like a technical job for Fedoseev if he's able to successfully start pushing, I think, a4, a5, and so on the queen side.
Yeah, it's looking super tough here. You have to recapture with the rook. Or actually, bishop takes d7 is also possible because you attack the knight. And I think he didn't want to take with the rook because then knight d4 looks annoying, putting pressure here. And again, he's trying his hardest. He's now down only 3 minutes on the clock, but still, I mean, he's down a pawn, and Fedoseev has got full control here. And 8 minutes is a lot of time to convert this game. So he's trying, but I think if Fedoseev does not win this game, he'll be kicking himself. Like, he's got to win this one if we're very objective.
Absolutely. But one thing I'm thinking for Hikaru's position, how can he get out of this? If he's able to just keep simplifying those pawns, right? Like, I'm thinking at some moment, if you can maybe push on the king side, some kind of f6, g5, like f5, just trying to, if you can liquidate all those king side pawns, at least in some kind of positions, the more pawns you trade, the closer you get to, being able to hold it. Saying that, objectively speaking, you look at, just visually the position, Fedoseev's piece is just dominating the center of the board. But again, Hikaru really digging in. The rook is on a7, just keeping that a pawn at bay, defending b7. And the time, as you pointed out multiple times, Benjamin, he keeps cutting into it, right? Now it's only 2 minutes. So again, if he's able to just equalize the time, that's going to be a major step in the right direction for his chances to hold the game.
Exactly, yeah. Now he's down only a little bit more than 2 minutes, so he's fighting back. King to d3, Fedoseev keeps improving his position. Knight at d6. The computer doesn't. Wait. Isn't that just another pawn?
And
that's such a pity. Like, he was fighting back, but that's a big pawn. I don't think he could have allowed to.
Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, is there any way he thought this was like going to be okay for him? He gets the bishop pair, but I just had a look at the camera, and he had a very visceral reaction. Yeah, obviously he did not mean to do that, and yeah, now it's 2 pawns. I mean, your only saving grace is opposite color bishops, right? I think if you could trade your light square bishop somehow for the knight, bishop f1, right? Like right here, if he gets another move, maybe then you could hold on. But
but bishop c4 is a big mistake by Fedoseev. Maybe now bishop f5. Wait. King
bishop
back and rook
h8, right?
h8. And look at this. The bishop can come back to e4, and all of a sudden, black's pieces get super active, and it's really difficult for white to get out of this. Hikaru, don't count him out just yet. And again, he's down only 2 minutes on the clock. King e8 and rook h8 played instantly.
Yeah, he needs that counterplay. The rook combines extremely well with the bishops. Now, yeah, if you give him a couple of moves, bishop b4, rook h2, you might even start seeing some ideas of perpetual, right? Just back and forth. That's okay. Bishop d5 looks really good from Fedoseev, just to prevent bishop b4 and attack b7. But all of a sudden, that rook, it was just sitting on a7 for like 10 moves. Now it's really in the game here, and there's pressure on e3 as well. So you can just keep giving these checks. Does Fedoseev have anything? Did he save that pawn even? I guess he could
Maybe
go backwards.
He has to go back to e1 because there's no check on h1.
No check on h1.
If you go here, I think I just keep checking, and king e1 is on the board. It's looking tough because this pawn on b7 is under attack. Hikaru goes rook to h3. He is giving up the b7 pawn, but I think he's got good chance to hold this endgame with the 2 bishops. Also, the pawn on f4 is going to drop, and it's going to take a while for white to push the pawns. And in the meantime, you can try to trade off your light squared bishop for the knight to go into an endgame with opposite color bishops. And look at the clock. Hikaru all of a sudden only down 1 minute and 20 seconds. Again, he's fighting as hard as he can here.
This reminds me of another game that Hikaru held. I'm not sure if you remember this one in another match against Wesley. So Hikaru had the black pieces, It was a Scotch defense. He mixed up his move order. He was on the back foot the whole game. It was an end game. He was opposite. I think it was opposite color bishops, and he was down so much time, but he just kept the pace, and actually, not only did he manage to draw the game, not only did he manage to save the game, he managed to win the game because Wesley, of course, it was a must-win for him. So this kind of reminds me, the position's bad, but again, he's fighting, looking for chances, making it as difficult as possible for his opponent. And again, he's made up, like you said, only a minute difference now between the players. Of course, 4 and 5 minutes, still plenty of time for him to figure this out. But even objectively speaking, I'm looking at this bishop at f5, the rook at h2. It's going to be difficult for white to make progress. As you mentioned, a move like a4 is desirable, but again, then you might have bishop d7, and if you can eliminate, the bishop for the knight, then you're going to be in good shape. Saying that, e4, it looks like a fantastic move from Vladimir. He's getting those pawns moving, and he's offering a rook trade. You cannot accept that if you're playing black here.
Yeah, so rook h1, king still on the board. Now your bishop's under attack. I guess you have to move to d7 to attack the knight. He gives another check, but king b3
though, completely safe.
And all of a sudden, everything is protected in white's position. And how do you defend the pawn on b7? He goes bishop to g4. Wait, if you take, I guess...
He's threading bishop d1, bishop e2. Yeah, like a weird perpetual there.
But a4,
a4 very clever.
Fedoseev.
Yeah,
Checking a3. And a5. a5 is also a big move. Because then this a pawn is going to run very fast. And I think Hikaru is running out of resources here.
The problem is this bishop. If you can play bishop d4, you can get in the game, or bishop e3. But other than f2, it's really hard to transfer in the game because he's very close to bishop d1, king a3, right? If you're able to just include that darks for bishop in the attack, then you can actually get some counter chances. And Hikaru's thinking again. It seemed like his activity was really promising, but Fedoseev found some really nice, king maneuvers to neutralize it. So now Hikaru is trying to bail out into the opposite color bishop endgame, but 3 extra pawns seems like too much for me for there to be a legitimate drawing chances.
Yeah, and Fedoseev took the pawn, rook e2 on the board, maybe just bishop c6, offering to trade the bishops, and then you can start pushing this a pawn down the board. That seems like a very effective plan. It's looking super tough for Hikaru. Only a miracle can save him here. He goes rook to e2. Yeah, again, I don't see a way to include this bishop. That's really the main problem. Bishop d5. Wait, can you take a rook e3? He goes for it.
He goes for it. Last chance.
But
it's hard to believe.
E5 is the only winning move.
So the good news is that if you do trade an e3 and you have to go f5, then your pawns are completely locked in dark squares. But Fedoseev does not want that. Smartly puts his pawns. Excuse me. You don't want to get your pawns stuck in the light squares. He puts them on dark squares. That way he cannot get blockaded.
G6. Hikaru's only chance. He wants to take on c3 and go bishop to e3. It feels like white should be winning, but this is not over just yet. Again, yeah, just as you were pointing out, if white plays something like this, we can take, and white is getting blocked on the dark squares. I think Hikaru is, this should be a draw.
This is like a fortress, and white king can't even get in that position. Surprisingly.
G6. Clever move by Hikaru. Now let's say king c4. Can we take and go bishop to e3? Maybe it's losing, but it's not obvious to me. I think he's got drawing chances here. And Fedoseev's got 4 minutes to try to figure out the win.
No, this is exactly what Hikaru does. Even to the very end, he's looking for chances, maximum opportunities to make it difficult for his opponents. Unfortunately, with the Armageddon format of giving, he starts off with a lot less time, he wasn't able to get Fedoseev into time trouble where he was more likely to make a mistake. And this move, king e4, that's a great move because now you can't play bishop e3. My pawn is running to b7. That must be a win. You have the passed b and e pawns. That seems like too far apart for black to be able to hold a fortress. But yeah, I guess Hikaru, what's he going to do? He's going to use his king to corral the pawn.
Yep,
king d8.
There he goes. All right,
but I think the pawns might be a little too wide. Can I go b7? I don't even need to lose my pawn. Yeah, I can go b5 as well on top of that.
I think the real problem is really that white keeps this pawn on the board. Like, if you can take this pawn, you have some chances, but this pawn is always going to be useful. It can always push the king back a little bit away. So I feel like this has to be a technical win for Fedoseev. Maybe something like bishop c6, king d5, king e6, put the king here, and it's tough. But Hikaru still has this g-pawn that he can potentially use to try to deflect Fedoseev's king.
I was wondering if he puts the bishop at e7 and keeps the pawn on g6, just trying to have a makeshift fortress of sorts, right? With Hikaru keeps his bishop more active though. It allows Fedoseev in this way, but yeah, how do we make progress?
A win. Like, you go king e6, I keep waiting, and B6 is a big mistake according to him. Oh, look at... No, wait, I was gonna say...
No stalemate, no. If king d6, bishop e5, it's not a stalemate.
Wait, but he's thrown it. He's thrown it. Wait, apparently
bishop
like
e3 is a draw?
G5, that was not the move. E6. Maybe, but B6 to me looks like a big mistake. Now there's so many stalemate ideas.
Benjamin, isn't... Yeah, exactly. If you go e6, bishop f6... And I just is that some bizarre theoretical draw where I just keep not theoretical, but I just push the pawn and you can't stop stalemate?
Yeah, wait, what if I just do this, right?
G4
E7,
and then check, yeah.
Check. Oh my god.
This is unbelievable. And you can't stop perpetual. Stalemate, excuse me.
Stalemate. Oh my god, what a throw. And G5 is on the board. I think this is just a draw now. Oh my god, you don't make this up. I think this is just a draw now because look at this. I think even in case white goes E6, we just go G4. And what is white ever gonna do?
Yeah, because you can't give up the b7 pawn because then you lose both b7 and b6.
Yeah, like you just sit here and you can never do this. And Hikaru is he's smiling a little bit. He's thinking like, there's no way, right? This is incredible.
He's a magician. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I mean, the only thing I was going to say is that there's no increment, but 146 is plenty of time on the clock here. You just go back and forth. And I was going to say to avoid the stalemate, you can give out the b7 pawn, but not really, because black just stacks the bishop for the e-pawn, takes on b6. This is unbelievable. This could just be a fortress. We do have a couple more moves in the game. What has Fedoseev come up with?
Played e6,
G5,
G4, bishop 2, G2, bishop a3, check, king e5, and bishop e7. I don't know why he doesn't just push this pawn, but I guess this is fine. He's hanging on to the pawn with bishop d6, king h4. And he goes bishop f8. He's given.
But even if you lose the g pawn, how does white win? Because you can never play e7. I just take it and it's a draw.
Is there really no way to win this? I guess not.
Yeah,
this is incredible. I've never seen anything like this.
It's funny. You would be winning without the b pawn, without the b6 pawn. That pawn is actually completely hurting. White would just be able to push e7 without any stalemates. So Fedoseev, he gave that check. He's like, I'm getting that king all the way to b8. It's out of the game. And now they're just going to play 50 moves as Fedoseev might be trying to win on time. This is incredible. What an unbelievable hold for Hikaru. Multiple times it looked like, okay, he solved one issue. Fedoseev solved this issue. But at the end, a magical stalemate fortress will get the match in Hikaru's favor.
And Hikaru is getting the pre-moves, and he knows, like right here, that he can pre-move bishop to e7 because even if white pushes the pawn, he will take. And here he can pre-move bishop to f8. And probably also... Fedoseev hung the pawn, but it's probably not a good idea to take that. Just keep the position as is, and there's nothing white can do. Again, the moment you go king d7, you hang this pawn, and there's just no way white can play e7 without not allowing a stalemate.
That could just be lost if you take on b7, right? Because I go bishop check, then I push my pawn to b7, and I get the same position without the pawn on b6. That way, I actually can now push e7. So that was a clever try for Fedoseev, but Hikaru is not fooled at all. I think at some point he's got to push e7 and then play another 50 moves. But it's actually Fedoseev now who's down on time. Just no chance for him to flag Hikaru. And unbelievable. This is going to be a draw. He's done it again. He's done it again.
It's incredible, yeah. And now they're getting close to the 50 moves. You can just pre-move bishop e7 in so many cases.
Yeah, you can't even take the bishop, funnily enough. And he does it here. And he took the bishop. He takes it. That is official. 127 moves. Hikaru, he was down one pawn. He was down two pawns. But doesn't matter. He was down three pawns and a bishop at the very end. It's still a draw. And he's smiling. He's smiling. He's shaking his head in jubilation and relief. And he's just laughing about it. That he's pulled off a draw from this losing endgame. Incredible stuff here.
I have no idea what we just witnessed. Like, I thought this one was over. Like, it should have been a pretty straightforward technical win for Fedoseev. But yeah, he really went wrong with pushing that second b pawn up to b6, because then Hikaru always had the stalemate idea. So let's go back real quick to right here. I think you can probably, it's not that straightforward, but you probably just walk your king up. And in case black sits, you just play something like this. And eventually black's going to have to concede something. Or the computer says the easiest way to win is the queen.
Yeah, because now you go king d6 and you get the d7 square as well. And also, you can even get that same position like in the game without the b6 pawn, without any stalemates.
Exactly. And as the game was still going on, I think we are on a little bit of a delay. Hikaru came in the chat. He said, "Are you not entertained?" And we also just got word that Big Fish blocked Hikaru again. So
again,
you win some, you lose some. Of course, they're both great competitors, but yeah, I mean, Fedoseev must be kicking himself. He only needed a draw in game 4. He lost in 25 moves, and now he was completely winning. It was a technical win, and he threw it away. And Hikaru just said he will join in a second for an interview. So that will be awesome.
That'll be awesome to get his thoughts on this very, very closely contested match. But he is the winner, and he moves on to play. If we get the bracket.
Wesley, I think Wesley. But let's pull up the bracket if we can. He's playing Wesley in the semifinals of the winners bracket. By the way, let's have a very quick look at what's happening in the other games. Yeah, here we see Hikaru wins his match against Vladimir Fedoseev, and he is going to play Wesley So in the semifinals of the winners bracket. But let's
a familiar opponent for sure.
Yes. All right, in the meantime, Fabiano Caruana has won his match against Lequang Liam. He won the Armageddon game with the white pieces. And let's have a look at Magnus. Is Magnus... Magnus lost to Artemiev. Wow.
So, 5 decisive games in the match. Lots of bloodshed being... lots of blood being shed, that is. But Artemiev... He had the lead, and it seemed like Magnus was constantly playing, second fiddle. But ultimately, Artemiev did show superiority, and that leads Magnus into the losers bracket. He will be playing against, I think, Liam. Oh,
incredible!
Hey, how you guys doing? Can you hear me?
Would have accepted. And
yes,
we have Hikaru here. Hikaru, how's it going? Congratulations on winning your match. Was there any point on which you gave up hope?
Give me 1 second. It sounds a little bit soft, so let me just change the sounds. Give me 1 second. Hello? Yeah. Okay, should be fine. Yeah, so as you were saying...
So Hikaru, congratulations on winning your match. What are your first thoughts after this incredible comeback?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a crazy match, of course. I mean, there were moments when I played great chess for like a couple of moves, and there were many moments when I played very, very, very bad chess. Let's leave it at that. I mean, I don't want to diminish, obviously, the way that Vladimir played or I played, but if I'm being frank, I mean, I think we both played maybe a 2200 level if we were lucky.
Hikaru, we saw after one of those games that I'm sure you'd like to put behind you is game 3, where there were mutual blunders traded at the end, and Fedoseev took the lead. Benjamin and I, we were debating what would you play in game number 4. We were thinking, is the modern? I threw my hat in the ring that it was going to be Sicilian. You did just have a phenomenal victory over Linier Dominguez last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, to this point. And that game just worked like a charm. I mean, 25 moves completely obliterated him. What do you think was the difference maker in that game 4 after such a closely contested match those first 3 games?
I mean, I think basically it was very, it was just, I mean, I just wanted to kind of get it over with. Again, like being frank, I just wanted the match to end. I was so disgusted by not playing knight f5 check that I was disgusted by everything. I mean, I don't even know how to put it. But it's like I thought I'd play a Sicilian, and I was kind of surprised he played e4. Honestly, I thought he would play d4, but then he goes into Sicilian. And I beat Wesley in this, but mainly it's just that if I get knight f4 and bishop g4, I mean, I'm gonna at least have something to play for. It's not that it's necessarily good, but I'm gonna have a prayer. And I mean, it ended up working out really nicely with D's knights on the edge of the board. So. Can't complain. And then this last game was maybe even worse, though. All the games were just like, I don't know, not good.
Right. Yeah, we thought you got a good position out of the opening, but really the move d5 was the start of your trouble. And honestly, after that, he played a pretty good game for the most part. It was just
why can't I hear you guys? Something I can't hear you. 1 second.
We're here.
I can hear you.
Oh, there we go. There we go. We're good. We're good.
Yep.
Okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah. Sorry, no, it's because thanks to Microsoft and the Windows update, all the sounds are off now. So everything's completely wrong. I haven't used Zoom since I installed the updates like last night or the night before. So just had to get the right input. Anyway, yeah. So what were you saying, Benjamin?
Yeah, the move d5 was really the start of all of the problems. But we felt like he played a pretty good game all the way up to him playing that move b6.
Yes, but there was one moment after he kind of let me back in the game where I could have played bishop d7 and I didn't do it. And I was very upset at myself that I didn't do it. Because there's one moment with the rook on h3, I think. There's one moment with the pawns on f4, e3, king on e2 where I think I had bishop d7. And I'm not sure that I would have lost that position. So
trying to trade into some opposite color bishop endgame earlier on, you mean? Or
well, actually, yeah, right here. I go back a couple of moves. Sorry, now I'm watching it live. Yeah, so go back like king. Yeah, right here instead of rook f3, I have bishop d7 because then knight d4, I take and rook h3. Yeah. If I played bishop d7, I think I might have actually saved the. Well, I mean, I know I saved the game, but I feel like I lost. But if I played bishop d7 there before the king started wandering to the queen side, I think I might have saved it. Basically, it felt to me like Fedoseev at some point he got too complacent. Like he probably had some forced win, and then he got too complacent, and it got tricky. I mean, like a4 rook b2, and I mean it's not like it's good necessarily, but there are chances.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and then that end was. You know what the ending reminded me of? I mean, you guys, there's a very famous video. Am I lagging or not?
No.
No, okay. Chat was saying I'm lagging. But anyway, there was a very famous endgame played in the World Rapid and Blitz. It was in the Blitz portion of the second or third to last round game in 2019 between Magnus Carlsen and Gucci Reza Firouzja. And in that game, Magnus was Firouzja had like 3 pawns on the king side, like double G and maybe an E pawn or double E and a G pawn. And we know what happened at the end of the game with the flag and everything. But basically, it reminded me a little bit of that. That was some of the inspiration.
Sorry, Hikaru, but I was going to say that game, well, we know what happened in the end, but objectively, I thought there was no fortress there, right? But it was just so.
I think it was a fortress.
Was it?
Like
Okay.
it was very, very nuanced. And so, like somehow, because I had that game in my mind towards the end of this game, it's like I felt like I was okay. And the most important thing that I realized when Fedoseev was thinking was to not grab the juicer on b7. That was also very critical. So if I take the pawn on b7, I lose the game. In this end game with the 3 pawns.
Right.
Did you realize quickly? Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So I was going to ask the same question. When he played the move b6, did you realize right away that your chances for a draw increased dramatically because of all the stalemate tricks?
Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling that pushing the pawns to b... Somehow it felt like, yeah, pushing the pawn to b6 was a mistake. I mean, still, though, I'm not sure it's winning. Or maybe it's an easy win, actually, if he doesn't push b6.
Yeah, he actually has a resource. He can play like b8, and then that way he can get a similar position without the stalemate. So it was a clever trick he tried when you guys were free moving. He played like bishop f1, and you didn't take b7, right? Because then he can put the other pawn on b7. So it was a little tricky. Maybe he didn't realize how precise he needed to be here.
That's really dank. He could have pushed the pawn to b8. Wow. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, again, already here, though, when we don't have much time, it's very tricky because it's a bishop's opposite color. So you have to find the right move. You make one wrong move, you're not going to win. And to make matters worse, of course, here, I still at a minute 52. But yeah, it's what it is.
Yeah, no, we certainly thought like white should be winning here, but to be fair, it's not that straightforward. Because I mean, at some point you want to go b8 and king d6, but you got to be 100% sure, and you can't really calculate everything to the end. And if you make a mistake with white, as you said, you can suddenly end up in a drawn endgame. So yeah, didn't feel like it was 100% over, but yeah, after the move b6, we like, when did you realize like, hey, this is a draw?
I think as soon as it's sort of when he was thinking after, it's right before I jettisoned the G pawn, right before he like thought for 30 seconds before moving the king over to capture the pawn on g6. I pushed it down to g3. It was right around that moment that I was pretty sure that there was going to be that it was going to be a draw. It was right around this moment. I think he thought for 30 seconds, this specific move maybe. And that's when I realized that probably it was going to be a draw.
Right.
Yeah, it's bizarre because even without the G pawn, he's got 3 extra pawns, but there's absolutely nothing he could do.
Right, as long as I don't take the pawn on b7.
As long as you don't, to get out. This reminds me of another infamous endgame. Again, because there's a pawn on b6 and a light square bishop, is the endgame that was played between Shanklin and Anish in White Kansei. And that game, we know how that ended too. But again, it was the same motif. On the queen side, you have the stalemates. of course, if you don't give up hope, then you could definitely find this stuff. But an incredible state. I mean, this also we were talking about Benjamin. This reminds me of, in a way, the game that you also in Armageddon played against Wesley So, where again he's trying to press in this end game. You're down on time, but you make it to the very end, and then in that game you also manage to not only win the match but win that game as well. So just another performance of defense.
The whole day though was wild, because even before I got into it, like the third game was really tilting. Not just because I missed Knight F5, but like in the middle of the game. I mean, I don't know if you guys caught this, but basically in the middle of the game, FedEx came and just started ringing my bell. Because apparently, I think what Misfit sent me required a signature or something. So like they ring the bell, and then like I have to get up, and then I'm tilted, and I mean it's just a total mess all around, because they rang the bell, I ignored it, and they kept ringing. They just kept pressing the doorbell, and so yeah, it was just a total mess. But it's what it is, and
we did catch that, yeah.
Yeah, we saw you getting up from your chair, but they, I guess they were fine with that, because I guess like. Very strictly, you cannot get up, right?
Yeah, I mean, very strictly, that's true. I mean, it wasn't that long, but also I would say like in the past Champions Tour, Nepo, I think he's been getting up like 3 or 4 times during every single game. Like, so maybe that was I don't know if that was last year, 2 years ago when it was, but yeah, and I don't think I exactly responded the best way in my game either. So yeah, people can say what they want, but it's not like a rattle off 10 great moves in a row. So
the FedEx Gambit paid off in the end, though.
Yes, exactly. No, it did. It paid off. Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, yeah, great stuff. Winning the match. I mean, it looked very tough at numerous moments, but you pulled through. And tomorrow right? You're going to be playing Wesley So. Of course, you've played him in a lot of matches against the American Cup, and now you'll be playing him again. So what are your thoughts about that matchup? Yeah,
it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I mean, I think we're both very solid. I'll have to be a lot better than I was today for sure. But, at the end of the day, we move on.
Hikaru, 2 more quick things from me. One thing, I'm not sure if you had a chance to catch all the results, but Magnus was not eliminated, but he lost to Artemiev in the match. They had 5 decisive games. So he's going to be in the losers bracket, and he's going to be playing, I believe, against Liam over there. So just want to let you know about that. Lots of people were speculating, are we going to have the top 2 seeds in the elimination bracket? That would throwing the whole thing into pandemonium.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the big issue is that everyone's a little bit tired, a little bit rusty. Like Magnus was off playing poker, not studying chess. Wesley and I played the American Cup, so I think we're both quite tired. I mean, Wesley lost the first game too, right? Or he lost a game, and then he was able to turn it around. But
yeah, he lost.
I think everyone's just a little bit tired, a little bit out of it, and it's what it is. But but everything is wild, because if you look at Magnus's like 4th game today, I mean, Artemiev, in no world should he ever lose that 4th game. I mean, you can't lose that ever. And then he loses that game. So it's just all very strange.
It's the Magnus effect.
It is. And also since we're here, I mean, just because this is my stream, I do want to say something for everyone who is watching the chat. There is no auto mod right now. So we have this issue with some words and some of these things. Once there's an auto mod and we can block words directly, everything is going to be better. So I just wanted to point that out for people who are watching the chat.
And talking about people being blocked, are you worried that Fedoseev is going to block you again, or are you still blocked? Or
I mean, if he hasn't blocked me, he should block me after today, because this is ridiculous. I mean, there's no world in which I should ever have won this match. But again, on the other hand, like I said, he would be the first to admit that, frankly, today both of us deserve to lose. We both were absolutely horrible. And I mean, I think going forward, both of us are going to be a lot better. I have to play Wesley, and he has to play who exactly? Does he have to play Magnus?
I think Aronian.
He gets Levon. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's very, very tough. But at the end of the day, it's at least I got the dub today. I can now do a recap. I mean, if I had just lost that 4th game in 5 minutes, like I was aiming for, probably I would have just gone outside, jumped in a pool, and forgotten about everything. But now at least everybody will get to see a happy recap, and we move on to tomorrow.
Okay,
and Vladimir has told me. Sorry, Benjamin. I was going to quickly add.
Oh, go ahead.
Vladimir told me before he likes to play with you more than he likes to play against you. So I'm sure he's looking forward to potentially teaming up again. For the playoffs, maybe against Benjamin or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure this match only contributed to those feelings for him.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's insane. And like I said, I want to be happy about it, but I also feel bad. Like I don't feel good in general about anything with the match today, really. But somebody's got to win at the end of the day, unfortunately. And it ended up being me, fortunately. And I mean, I think I used up probably like 3 or 4 of my 9 lives today. So I'll have to be better. And we'll just keep going.
Okay, yeah, great stuff getting the win. And yeah, how does it feel to play online chess again after you got back to over the board at the American Cup? Like, do you feel any difference, or what's your overall feeling?
It's very tough. On the one hand, it feels kind of foreign because like I was gone. I didn't stream for what, like 12 or 13 days. Then of course we made our big announcement. I've been streaming on Kick, obviously. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. I felt like I felt like going to like the third game. I was slowly sort of starting to get into it, but the third game was horrible. So I would say it's going to take some time getting used to it. I would say at the moment I probably actually like over the board more, if that makes any sense for people who are watching.
So is it just the 2-dimensional versus the 3-dimensional that makes a difference for you, or the time control? Like maybe you're enjoying classical a little bit more again?
Well, I think what it is that when you playing online, you're just so used to playing blitz games, like 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatnot. So you play these games that are so fast, right? And then it's like suddenly we're playing like 15-minute games, and I just have this urge to make a move every 5 seconds. I just want to make a move every 5 seconds because as Levy would say, chess is boring. It's the most boring game in the world. Nobody should play chess. So I just want to move every 5 seconds, and then it's like I have to stop myself at some moment. So it's very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, I think everyone's enjoying it. And again, big shout out also to all the fans who are watching. Obviously, you guys are amazing. All these loyal followers. I know there are a lot of people out there who are hoping that viewership's going to go off the cliff. Nobody's going to watch or anything. But it's great to see that there's so many fans who enjoy the commentary with you guys, myself, and everything else.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, you're doing a great job kickstarting your career here on Kick.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
No pun. No.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's all fun. It's all fun now that it's over. But that was definitely very stressful. Very stressful. But we found a way.
Okay. Awesome.
Congratulations again, Hikaru.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. And I guess tomorrow, you'll be covering it again. So just keep up the good work, and we'll go from there.
Yep. All right. Well, have a good one, and good luck tomorrow against Wesley.
All right. Thank you so much, you guys. You too. And also for everybody who's watching, one last thing. I think we're going to be sending a raid over to probably the first other chess streamer who has an audience. I think Bortnick's streaming on Kick. So I think we're going to be raiding him at the end of this. So those of you guys who are watching, make sure to send him a lot of love and everything if you have the chance.
Yeah, make sure to support Bortnick, because now if you subscribe to him, he actually gets some money and not everything.
Oh no, he ended? Oh no, he ended? Oh no. Oh no, we were gonna send him the raid. I'll send him a DM later, and I'll make sure they stream like tomorrow or something, and he can get the raid, or one of you guys can stream. But at any rate, you guys, just thanks for all the love and support. And obviously, as far as Kick goes, it's still in beta, so there's certain things that need to get blocked out. I mean, there's no auto mod, so we can't just like block things as easily. But things are only going to improve going forward.
All right, awesome.
All right, see you guys.
See you, Hikaru. We'll check out your recap in just an hour, I'm sure.
Absolutely. All right, you guys. Bye.
Bye. All right, you guys. So great stuff. We got Hikaru for an interview. As you guys saw, he wasn't too happy about the quality of play. Very understandable. It was a very up and down match, especially game 3, Alex. Really anything could have happened. And I was shocked that he did not play knight f5. And it's kind of funny how he turned his tilt into fire, so to speak. And he used it to come back in game number 4.
Absolutely. I mean, I think no one was more shocked than Hikaru himself at missing knight f5 there. And I think, like you said, that was a great point. He just used that to play aggressively Sicilian, just, okay, whatever happens, happens. Obviously, either I'm done in 5 minutes, one way or the other. And of course, the rest is history. And then on top of that, to have the fortitude to hold this endgame. I mean, just phenomenal stuff. Not many people in the world who can do it. Maybe just the only man. We just witnessed him pull it off. But tomorrow, we're going to be back watching his match against Wesley. So, I mean, I was going to ask Hikaru, and I forgot. So I can't imagine just like playing the same guy in super long matches every week. But I guess that's the life, of professional, amateur player and professional streamer. Exactly.
Yeah, that's just how it goes for these top players. Like, he's had so many matches against Magnus, against Wesley So, Fabiano. He's played them like, I don't know, 200 games at this point. And yeah, they just have these long drawn-out matches that always go down to the wire. But also, guys, I think tomorrow will we already have the matches in the losers bracket. I mean, Magnus, he is down to his last life. If he loses tomorrow against Liam Lay, he's out of the tournament. Quite a shocker that he lost today, but we can't count him out just yet. Maybe he will come back in the grand finale. But for now, you guys, we are gonna be calling it a day. Enjoy the outro. Thanks, Alex, for commentating alongside of me, and we will see you tomorrow. Alex, I will leave the final words up to you.
Absolutely. My pleasure to be back with you, Benjamin. Team up to watch some great chess. Tomorrow, I think same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, we will be live and looking at Hikaru's games. And everyone here on Kick, hope everyone will be back. You don't want to miss the show. It's going to be terrific. Nail biters, and we'll see you then.